My brother saved my childhood sweetheart, but lost his own life to the sea. Later, I married that sweetheart, and we shared a life of mutual devotion for 40 years. He dedicated himself wholeheartedly to me and my family, yet on his deathbed, he confessed to me that he had actually made a suicide pact with his one true love. He resented me and my brother for his entire life. I've been reborn, and this time, I couldn't care less if you live or die. 1. Someone is drowning. The water was murky, and wave after wave crashed in. The scene before me was all too familiar, so familiar it made me tremble. I stood on the beach, the just hung up distress call still clutched in my hand. Soon, the sound of the lifeboat's engine and the distant wail of an ambulance siren filled the air. My fingers are ice cold. It was just like this in my past life. My brother dove headfirst into the sea to save Yichuan. Yichuan was pushed ashore, but he was swept away by the rip current, never to return. We were 17 that year, and my brother had just turned 20. Later, I married Yichuan, and we spent 40 years together. He was always attentive to my wishes and exceptionally filial to my parents. Everyone said that while the Quan family had lost a son, they had gained a son-in-law who was even better than a real son, until his final days with late-stage cancer, lying in his hospital bed. He was so thin he was just skin and bones. I held his hand, my tears long since spent. He looked at me, his eyes devoid of warmth, filled only with a lifetime's worth of venom. Qin Shiyun, do you know why I married you? Because your brother saved me. I had to repay the debt. He gave a laugh, an ugly, twisted thing. But do you know why I jumped into the sea that day? I suddenly didn't dare to listen, but his words stabbed at my heart like a knife. Pan Yu and I had a suicide pact. But your brother had to meddle and pulled me out. Pan Yu thought I'd gone back on my word. She resented me for the rest of her life. He took a breath and stared at the ceiling. And I resented you, and your brother. For the rest of mine, I let go of his hand. 40 years of marriage, 40 years of tenderness and care, all of it was a lie. It was all just a long, drawn-out act of repayment. I watched him take his last breath, and my heart turned to desolate waste. When I opened my eyes again, I was standing right here. The beach from when I was 17, a chaotic rescue scene. The briny scent of the sea washing over me. I had been reborn. I dug my nails hard into my palm, the pain sharpening my focus. Thank goodness, I managed to get my brother out of the way by saying I wanted ice cream. I was prepared to let that perfect couple have their tragic end. But before the lifeguards arrived, I saw someone else dive recklessly into the water towards Yichuan. I couldn't just stand by and watch an innocent person die for nothing, so I alerted the lifeguards immediately. Now, the rescue boat is closing in, its crew straining to reach the figure thrashing in the sea. 2 people. It was Yichuan and the man who saved him. A suicide pact. What a joke. Where was Pan Yu? Soon, both of them were rescued and carried, dripping wet, onto the beach. Medical personnel crowded around to examine them, and I slowly walked over. Standing on the periphery, Yichuan coughed up some water, hacking violently as he opened his eyes. His gaze swept over the crowd before settling on my face. In that instant, I saw the overwhelming fury and utter disbelief in his eyes. That was not the look Yichuan gave me when he was 17, that was the look Yichuan gave me when he was 57, right before his death. He had been reborn, too. He shoved the medical staff checking on him aside, struggled to his feet, and staggered toward me, dripping wet, his face ashen. Qin, sure, Yun, he ground out through clenched teeth, each syllable dripping with venom. Did you call the lifeguards? I looked at him calmly. What else was I supposed to do? Who asked you to interfere? He snarled, his voice hoarse. Do you have any idea what you've done? You've ruined everything, again, just like last time. Oh, so he came back after all. I just don't want any more innocent people to die because of someone else's foolish suicide pact. My tone was cold as my gaze swept past him, landing on the boy behind him who had just been rescued and was now sitting on the ground, coughing. The boy looked up, his face still pale with shock. He glanced at me, then at the agitated and furious Yichuan. Looking somewhat bewildered, Yichuan shot me a fierce glare, then scanned the crowd for Pan Yu's figure, but couldn't find her. He took a deep breath, turned back to me, and said in a tone dripping with condescension, Qin Shiyun, let me make this clear. This time, I won't force myself to be with you just because of some debt of gratitude for saving my life. I love Pan Yu, only her. Give it up. He was waiting to see me cry, to see me look at him with the same single-minded devotion I had in my past life, and all I did was let out a soft, indifferent oh. Then, I stepped around him and walked straight over to the boy sitting on the ground. I crouched down, pulled a packet of tissues from my pocket, and offered it to him. Hey, are you okay? Are you hurt anywhere? The boy took the tissues, wiped the seawater from his face, and shook his head. I'm fine, thanks. Was it you who called for help? Yeah, I nodded. Be more careful next time, rip currents are really dangerous. He was about to say more when a muffled sob came from beside him. Panyu seemed to appear out of nowhere. Throwing herself into Yichuan's arms, she clung tightly to his waist, burying her face in his soaked chest, her shoulders shaking. So she had been watching from the shadows all along. She must have been too afraid to show herself last time, after things had turned deadly. Yichuan's body stiffened for a moment. He instinctively raised a hand to return the embrace, but his gaze involuntarily flickered toward me, a look of guilt on his face. I turned my face away, focusing intently on the young man before me. After the medical staff checked him over and found he was fine, they told him to get some rest. Yichuan had his arm around Panyu's waist. He watched my calm profile and realized I hadn't spared him a single glance. In that moment, a look of surprise appeared in his eyes for the very first time, too. The sound of the ambulance faded into the distance. Panyu accompanied Yichuan to the hospital for a checkup. Before leaving, he glanced back at me with a look too complicated for me to bother deciphering. My parents and my brother arrived at the beach quickly. My brother, still holding an ice cream, pulled me into a hug so tight it made my bones ache. You scared me to death. Are you okay, Xiaoshi? His voice was still trembling. Thank goodness you didn't jump in to save Yichuan. No way, I immediately retorted. You like him so much, who knows if you'd act on impulse. So in my past life, it was because my brother knew I liked Yichuan that he risked everything to save him. I leaned into my brother's embrace, breathing in the clean scent of laundry detergent on his clothes, and tears began to fall. Alive, warm, my breathing, living brother. In my past life, this embrace had already turned cold by the time I was 17. It became a black and white photograph, a name carved on a headstone, and a hole in my heart that could never be filled. Brother. I choked up, my voice thick with emotion. I'm so glad you're okay. My mom walked over and patted my head. Silly child, what are you talking about? Your brother didn't go into the sea, he went to buy you ice cream. Come on, let's go home. We shouldn't come to the beach for the next few days. My father's face was grim too. What's going on with Yichuan? He's worrying his parents sick. Back home, the four of us had dinner. They were still shaken up talking about the incident. While I shut myself in my room, unfinished physics problems were still spread out on the desk, a neatly posted class schedule hung on the wall, and the crude clay figurine Yichuan and I made together in elementary school sat on the windowsill. Everything exuded that unique, innocent feeling of being 17, but I knew, nothing would ever be the same again. I had come back to life. I had returned to a time before the tragedy began. Carrying 40 years of memories and the desolate sense of a lifetime spent deceived, wasted, and resented, Yichuan had returned as well. He hates me. In our past life, he hated my brother for meddling and saving him, and he hated me for shackling him for a lifetime. In this life, he hates me for meddling again and saving him. How pathetic. I opened the very bottom drawer and took out a tin box. Inside were no valuables, just some faded greeting cards. A few reconciliation coupons Yichuan had written for me, and a handful of old photographs. 4-year-old me and 4-year-old Yichuan sat side by side on the swing, ice cream cones in hand. I was eating slowly, and a drop of cream fell onto the back of my hand. Just then, Yichuan leaned over and stuck out his tongue to lick it. Yichuan's mom, holding the camera, pressed the shutter, capturing that funny and intimate moment. Childhood sweethearts, innocent and inseparable. This was once my most cherished memory. I only found out later that his heart belonged to someone else. To him, all those little moments were just a burden he had to bear. I put the photo away. I won't look at it anymore. The next day at school, it was the talk of the town. Word about the rescue at the beach had spread, and there were all sorts of versions floating around. Some said I bravely called the lifeguard, while other rumors suggested Yichuan and Panyu had a suicide pact. During the break, Yichuan walked into the classroom. His face was still pale. His gaze swept across the room, lingering on my face for just a moment before quickly looking away, cold and distant. Panyu followed him in, her eyes slightly red and brimming with a pitiable fragility. The classroom fell silent for a moment, with all sorts of glances darting between the three of us. I didn't look up, just kept reciting my English vocabulary. Shiryun, my deskmate whispered, nudging my arm discreetly. Are you okay? You must have been terrified yesterday. Is it true that Yichuan and Panyu? I'm fine, I cut her off. I don't know anything about them. My tone was so flat, it even surprised me a little. My deskmate was taken aback, probably not expecting that reaction from me. In the past, I was always the one who cared the most whenever Yichuan was involved. The class bell rang, And the math teacher walked in carrying a stack of test papers, announcing a pop quiz. I took a deep breath, pushed the chaotic thoughts aside, and picked up the pen. In this life, all these grudges and entanglements can just step aside. I need to first grasp onto something solid, something that won't betray me. For example, the studies I've neglected for far too long, like my brother, whom I almost lost, like my own life. As the pen glided across the paper, formulas and problem-solving approaches forgotten for decades, after 40 years of settling, became startlingly clear, the gears of fate. The moment I forcibly wrenched them in a new direction on that beach, began to mesh anew, turning with a completely different sound. In that single glance between Yichuan and me, the 40 years of feigned tenderness and genuine resentment that lay between us shattered completely. All that remained was a floor of sharp, cutting debris, waiting to see who would be the first to get hurt. 3. In the days after my rebirth, I deliberately avoided any path where I might cross Yichuan's. I started using the west gate instead of the east gate to get to school, stopped fetching water for him during breaks, and chose badminton in P.E. class instead of picking basketball just to be on his team. I heard he's been avoiding me too. Good, less hassle. In the midterm exams of the first semester of senior year, my grades quietly climbed from the middle of the pack to the top 50 in my grade. My parents were pleasantly surprised, and my older brother ruffled my hair, saying, "My little sister's finally come to her senses." Only I knew that this was bought with 40 years of regret and hard lessons. At the dinner table where both families gathered, Yichuan's parents also praised my noticeable improvement. They brought up our old tradition of going skiing together on New Year's Day with a smile, asking me which resort I wanted to visit this year. In years past, I would have already looked at Yichuan with shining eyes, trying to guess his preference. Right now, I was looking down, replying to Ji Zhuiyan's message. He was explaining a solution to a competition problem, and I happened to have tried another clever approach. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I typed. "Xiaoshi." Auntie Yi called my name gently. I looked up, a lingering smile still on my face. "I'm fine with anything. I'll go along with your plans." With that, she naturally lowered her gaze and went back to typing. A brief silence fell over the dinner table. My mom chimed in with a laugh, trying to smooth things over. "This kid, she's been glued to her phone lately. If her grades hadn't improved, I'd have thought she was addicted to gaming." Yichuan, sitting across from me, paused his chopsticks. He heard my brief, sharp laugh. He pressed his lips together, then spoke up. "This year, I'd like to bring Panyu along. She's never been skiing, and I want to teach her." The air froze for a moment. My parents' smiles stiffened, and Yichuan's parents also looked slightly awkward. Everyone knows about that unspoken understanding between the Yi family and our Quan family, and that I've had a crush on Yichuan since we were kids. Bringing another girl on a family trip sends a pretty clear message. My brother frowned and was about to say something, but I gave him a gentle kick under the table. "Sure, that sounds fine," I said, lifting my gaze. My eyes swept past Yichuan before settling back on his parents. "The more, the merrier, and Panyu from our class is really sweet. We'll definitely have a good time." My reaction was too natural. No shock, no sadness, not even a flicker of surprise. It was as if he hadn't just said he was bringing his first love on our family trip, but was merely asking if the food tasted good. Yichuan's fingers tightened slightly around his chopsticks. I knew all the words he had prepared to deal with my tears, my questions, even my anger, were now stuck in his throat. He looked at me, his eyes holding a deep confusion and a flicker of annoyance at being so thoroughly ignored. The atmosphere grew subtly tense during the latter half of the meal. The adults scrambled to keep the conversation going. Yichuan had fallen silent, occasionally glancing my way. Each time I'd just happened to turn to talk to my brother or look down at my phone, my screen lit up with a funny meme from Ji Zhuiyan, a cat tumbling into a snowdrift. The caption read, "Heard you're going skiing. Test out how much the falls hurt for me first." I couldn't help but let another small smile curl at the corner of my mouth. "Who are you texting?" my brother asked me. "It's that guy I rescued at the beach last time," I said. "He's the top student at our school. His parents even came to our school in person to thank me and gave me a lot of gifts." Across from me, Yichuan's chopsticks suddenly clattered to the floor with a sharp crack and snapped in two. "Tsk." I shot him a glare. "Useless. Can't even hold a pair of chopsticks steady. I hunted for that abroad. It's a matching pair with the one I'm holding." Well, it was bound to break anyway, for, as expected, Yichuan brought Panyu along on our New Year's holiday trip. The girl was wearing a brand new white down jacket, her delicate face glowing against the fluffy fur trim of her hood as she stuck close to Yichuan's side. I dropped off my luggage, changed into my ski gear, and headed straight for the beginner slopes. In my past life, I was a decent skier, but it had been years. I needed to get my feel for it back. Yichuan was nearby with Panyu. He was teaching her patiently, his hand on her waist, speaking in a gentle murmur. Panyu would let out little shrieks now and then, shrinking into his arms, even as he shielded her. His gaze kept drifting my way, seemingly by accident. I put on my goggles, tuning out the commotion over there, and focused on adjusting my snowboard, mentally reviewing the key points of shifting my weight. After a few runs down the gentle slope, my muscle memory slowly kicked in. I still took a few tumbles, but it was no big deal. I was having a blast, out of the corner of my eye. I noticed Yichuan trying to come help me a couple of times, but Panyu kept him occupied. It was fine, I could get up on my own. At noon, we had lunch at the mountain restaurant. The long rectangular table was packed. Panyu sat next to Yichuan and quietly complained that her hands were cold. Yichuan naturally took her hands in his and began to warm them, completely unfazed by the watchful eyes of both families and myself. I was sitting diagonally across from them, discussing with my brother whether we should try the intermediate slopes that afternoon. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a lunch photo from Jizhuian, a steaming bowl of ramen. Are the restaurants at the ski resort overpriced and terrible? Sending you some virtual comfort food for the soul. I laughed and replied, you nailed it, but the view is amazing, so I'll put up with it. Yeah, hang in there for now. I'll take you out for some proper good food when you're back. He replied instantly, what kind of good food? It's the kind of meal you'll remember for the rest of your life. Our messages went back and forth, not exactly frequent, but every time I looked down at my phone, a smile would tug at the corner of my mouth. Sure. My brother suddenly leaned in, his tone teasing. Spill it. Are you secretly seeing someone? You're always grinning at your phone. His voice wasn't loud, but a sudden hush fell over the table. All the adults turned to look, their eyes full of curiosity. Yichuan's movements halted as he turned to look at me. My face grew slightly warm, not from shyness, but from quickly assessing the situation. This was an opportunity, a chance to make everyone, especially Yichuan and his parents, fully understand that I had shifted my affections. So I lowered my gaze, feigning a hint of flustered embarrassment at being found out, gave a slight nod, and said in a soft yet clear voice, you could say that, really? My mom exclaimed with delight. Do I know them? When are you bringing them home to meet us? Mom, it's still very new. I mumbled evasively. Besides, most parents would be worried. Why are you so happy about it? Of course I'm happy, my mom said, casting a seemingly casual glance towards Yichuan and Panyu. Your grades have been getting better and better, which means this person is a good influence. Hearing this, Yichuan's expression didn't change, but his jawline tightened. Panyu nestled against him and asked softly, what's wrong? It's nothing, he said, averting his gaze. That night, after soaking in the family onsen, I was walking alone down the corridor back to my room when someone grabbed my wrist from behind with a strong grip. I was startled and turned around. Yichuan stood in the shadows of the corridor, clad only in a thin yukata. His hair was damp, and his eyes were inscrutable in the dim light. His chest rose and fell slightly, his breath carrying a faint scent of sake. Qin Shiyun, he demanded, who are you seeing? I tried to pull away, but he held fast. His grip on my wrist was painfully tight. What's it to you? I said with a displeased look. Is it that Jizhuian? He ignored my question and pressed on, his tone growing more urgent. Is it because you saved him, out of gratitude, paying a debt? Don't be naive, that kind of feeling won't last. His words pricked me like needles, yet, strangely, they made me want to laugh. Yichuan, I stopped struggling and looked him straight in the eye. What right do you have to question me like this? He froze. Do you think I should be just like last time, clinging to your side with blind devotion, so you can always find me when you turn around, waiting until your deathbed to finally throw me a scrap of the truth? Wake up, I'm even less willing to repeat that mistake than you are, and who I choose to love is my own business. Even if he's doing it out of gratitude, at least he's doing it willingly. Yichuan's face went pale. He opened his mouth to retort, but no words came out. In those eyes I once knew so well, a storm of shock, humiliation, and inexplicable panic swirled. It was as if he suddenly didn't know me at all. I wrenched my hand from his grasp and turned to leave. No footsteps followed me from behind, only the wind could be heard, whispering a low, mournful sound as it swept through the corridor eaves. 5. After the holiday, I threw myself into my studies with even greater determination. My contact with Jizhuian also became more frequent. At first, it was mostly to ask about homework problems, but later we began sharing snippets of our daily lives, griping about the cafeteria food, and complaining about exams. I realized that Ji Zhuiyan and Yichuan were two completely different kinds of people. In my past life, I organized notes for Yichuan countless times. He'd take them, rarely saying thank you, at most just ruffling my hair. After a basketball game, I'd hand him water. He'd gulp it down, shove the empty bottle back into my hand, and turn to joke with his teammates. He had a sensitive stomach, so I'd get up early to make congee, bring it to school in a thermos. He'd eat it as if it were his due. Occasionally complaining, "It's a bit salty." My efforts went completely unappreciated. I used to be clueless, thinking I wasn't good enough. Now I see the truth. His gaze was always fixed on Pan Yu's retreating figure, but Ji Zhuiyan was different. I casually brought him a box of matcha Swiss rolls as a souvenir. The very next day, a neatly compiled outline of competition materials appeared on my desk. I just mentioned in passing that I always struggle to catch the key points in English listening. That weekend, he had already sorted out categorized listening materials for me, from slow news to common exam dialogues, even including versions with his own recorded explanations. Give this a try, intensive listening plus shadowing, stick with it for a month. If you don't see any improvement, I'll treat you to dinner for a whole month. He said it so casually, but as I looked at those meticulously organized files, I felt a lump in my throat. After his early admission results came through, he had loads of free time, yet he spent most of it on me. He claimed he was here to get the full immersive experience of senior year, but in reality, he was just my free tutor. My math was weak, so he broke down typical problem types for me, one by one. When I was stressed and frustrated with a problem, he never got angry. He'd just take my pen and say, "Take a 10-minute break. Let me tell you a stupid story from my competition class." He remembered that I don't eat cilantro, that I get hungry at 3 p.m., and that I can't sleep before an exam. His kindness was thoughtful, considerate, and never overstepped. I didn't do well on my first practice exam and was feeling down. After school, I didn't wait for anyone and left by myself. Halfway home, it started to rain. Without an umbrella, I stood alone under the eaves of a convenience store, lost in thought. Through the curtain of rain, someone came speeding over on a bike and slammed on the brakes right in front of me. It was Ji Zhuiyan. He wasn't wearing a raincoat, his hair and shoulders were soaked, and he was panting heavily. "Why aren't you picking up?" He jumped out of the car, thrusting the dry umbrella into my hands while wiping the rain from his own face. My phone was on silent. I murmured. He understood the pressure I was under. He didn't offer a "try harder next time," nor did he say it's okay. He pointed to the steamy bun shop across the street. "I'm starving. Come grab a bun with me." I hear their pork buns are so juicy. The broth spills out with the first bite. The buns that day were a bit too salty, but as the warmth settled in my stomach, some of the heaviness in my heart seemed to lift, too. When we stepped outside after eating, the rain had lightened. He pushed his bike and walked slowly beside me. "Ji Zhuiyan," I suddenly asked, "why are you so good to me? Is it because of what happened at the beach?" He was taken aback for a moment, then smiled. His eyes looked especially clear in the damp, post-rain air. "Chin Shiryun, I'm an adult. Well, almost legally. Anyway, I know the difference between gratitude and liking someone." He stopped in his tracks, looked at me with utter seriousness, and said, "You saving me was the cause, and meeting you was the effect, but being good to you, wanting to see you, worrying about you, these are corollaries under the proposition I like you, not the inevitable conclusions of I'm grateful to you." Understand, in that moment, I felt a tingling sensation all over. So this is what it feels like to be confessed to. So, a good relationship isn't about one-sided giving and enduring, it's a back and forth, a mutual recognition. I could feel my cheeks burning fiercely. He awkwardly touched my forehead with the back of his hand. I should walk you home, you seem to have a fever." He never officially asked me out, but I could sense Ji Zhuiyan wanted me to focus on my studies first. Throughout all this, Yichuan noticed every little change in me. For some reason, he started appearing in my line of sight more and more often. Ji Zhuiyan and I were going over problems in a corner of the library, and he would coincidentally sit behind a nearby bookshelf. After school, Ji Zhuiyan waited for me by the gate with his bike. Yichuan would walk out with Pan Yu, their eyes would meet, and the air would turn tense. Pan Yu seemed to have sensed something. She clung to Yichuan even more tightly, and her temper was getting worse. Once, they got into an argument during self-study period and were caught red-handed by the patrolling grade dean. Both were taken out for a talking to and came back looking grim. I kept my head down, working through the practice papers, but my mind kept drifting back to the message from Ji Zhuiyan. "It's the final stretch now. Just keep your head in the game. You've got the skills, just do what you normally do. After the exam, I'll take you to that Japanese place we booked 3 months ago." A sense of fulfillment, unlike anything I'd ever felt before, washed over me. I was walking, step by step, toward a future I had never known, solid and bright, a future without him in it. 6. On the night the college entrance exams ended, our class had a dinner party booked in a large private room at a KTV downtown. The atmosphere was a long-awaited, carefree relief. The room was filled with the smell of beer, mingling with the cacophony of off-key singing, the clatter of dice, and bursts of laughter. Yi Chuan and Pan Yu were there too. They seemed to have made up. Pan Yu was sitting beside Yi Chuan, feeding him fruit, while he had his arm around her shoulder, occasionally leaning in to whisper something to her. They looked very close, but Yi Chuan's gaze kept drifting over to me, almost involuntarily. I was sitting with a few close girlfriends, chatting, playing dice, and occasionally humming along to the music. Ji Zhuiyan's class reunion was in the next room. He slipped over halfway through to bring me a cup of milk tea, whispering, "Don't drink anything cold," before hurrying back to his own classmates. Pan Yu's gaze, following Yi Chuan's line of sight, kept fixating on me, making me feel deeply uncomfortable. When I went to the private bathroom in the middle of the gathering, Pan Yu followed me in, her heels clicking on the floor. In the mirror, her makeup was flawless. She wore a new season ivory white Chanel-style dress that suited her perfectly. "Qin Shiyun," she said, not looking at me as she applied lipstick in the mirror, "how were your exams? Do you think your scores will be good enough to apply to the same universities as Yi Chuan?" "He did quite well this time." Her tone carried a natural air of superiority. "Not bad." I pulled out a paper towel to dry my hands, not in the mood to engage. "Oh, really?" She turned around, leaning against the sink, looking me up and down before suddenly smiling. "I heard you've been getting pretty close to that student with the guaranteed admission lately." "What, finally giving up on Yi Chuan?" "Yeah. Being clingy is pretty pathetic." I looked up, meeting her gaze calmly. "Are you done?" My indifferent attitude seemed to throw her off for a second. She then lifted her chin. "Yi Chuan is seeing me home tonight. We have plans." She winked suggestively. "Grown-up plans. You know what I mean." I gave a nod. "Congratulations," I said, then turned and walked away. "You." She clearly hadn't expected that reaction. In a flustered rage, she took a step to follow, but her high heel caught, and she nearly stumbled. Steadying herself, she watched my retreating back, her gaze suddenly turning sharp and venomous. Suddenly, a sharp shriek came from behind, followed by Pan Yu's voice, choked with tears. The private room fell silent in an instant, and everyone's eyes were on the two of us. Pan Yu shoved past me and rushed to Yi Chuan's side, her hair disheveled and her eyes red. The expensive dress she was wearing had a long tear running from her waist down to the hem, exposing her thigh. Pointing at me, her voice trembling with grievance and rage, she cried, "Yi Chuan, Qin Shiyun cornered me in the restroom. She accused me of stealing you away, and she tore my dress." A collective gasp rippled through the private room. Every single pair of eyes snapped toward me, some wide with shock, others filled with disbelief, but most simply waiting for the show to begin. Yi Chuan took off his own jacket and wrapped it around Pan Yu. He looked at me, his brow furrowed, his gaze conflicted, but it was quickly replaced by a look of weary disgust that said, "I knew it." His voice was tight with suppressed anger. "Qin Shiyun, what is your problem?" I stood my ground, unmoving. "I thought you had changed, that you'd really let it go." He suddenly stood up, walked over to me, and looked down at me from his height, his tone full of disappointment and accusation. "So you were just pretending not to care? You've been faking it all this time, just to humiliate Pan Yu in public today." He glanced back at Pan Yu's torn dress as if he'd found irrefutable proof. "This dress, Pan Yu told me, is a limited edition. You wanted it too before, didn't you? You saved up for a long time, only to find out it was already sold, and you've been holding a grudge ever since. So when you saw Pan Yu wearing it today, you were driven mad with jealousy and did this." My heart grew cold. Little by little, yes, in a past life, I did like a similar white dress. What girl hasn't had a little vanity and longing in her youth? I once treated it as a small dream, and on a certain summer night, blushing, I told it to Yi Chuan, who was still somewhat gentle back then. Back then, I thought sharing secrets was a form of intimacy. It turns out, in his hands, all of that could be turned into a weapon to attack me. The private room fell silent, everyone waiting for my reaction. I raised my hand, tucking a stray strand of hair behind my ear. Then, under the watchful eyes of everyone, I turned and walked at a measured pace to the restroom door, lifted my hand, and knocked. Knock, knock, knock. The door opened from the inside. Homeroom teacher Ms. Wang stepped out with a stern expression. She had been inside the whole time and had inadvertently overheard the entire exchange. Ms. Wang's sharp gaze swept over Pan Yu, then shifted to Yichuan, before finally settling on me, softening slightly. She then addressed the whole class. I was in the restroom. I heard every single word Pan Yu said to Qin Shiyun, and I clearly heard the sound of her tearing her own skirt. A louder wave of shocked murmurs rippled through the room, and instantly, all eyes turned toward Pan Yu. Pan Yu's face drained of all color, turning deathly pale in an instant. She stared at Teacher Wang in disbelief, then at me, her lips trembling. Unable to utter a single word, Yichuan froze completely. He looked at Teacher Wang, then at me, and finally at Pan Yu's utterly guilty expression. The anger on his face instantly solidified. Meeting his gaze, I spoke. Yichuan, what you think has never mattered. It didn't in the past, it doesn't now, and it never will. With that, I stopped looking at anyone, picked up my bag, gave a nod to Teacher Wang, and walked out of the private room. I left the hushed whispers of the room and Yichuan's guarded stare firmly behind me. The KTV soundproofing was excellent. From the rooms on either side, the muffled sounds of singing and laughter drifted through, as if from another world. After a moment's thought, I decided not to disturb Ji Zhuiyan's gathering. I had only taken a few steps out of the hall when I heard the sound of hurried footsteps behind me. Qin Shiyun, Yichuan called out as he caught up, his voice slightly breathless. But he wasn't there to apologize. Instead, he demanded, "What did you offer Teacher Wang?" "To get her to give false testimony and slander Pan Yu for you." I stopped walking but didn't turn around. The chill in my heart spread all the way to my fingertips. "Look, this is Yichuan for you." Even when the truth came crashing down on him, his first instinct was still to defend Pan Yu and to think the absolute worst of me. "Say something." He strode over and blocked my path, his eyes rimmed with red. Whether from anger or something else, I couldn't tell. "You planned this all along, didn't you? You even got the teacher in on it. Do you hate Pan Yu that much? Do you hate me that much?" I looked at his face, the one I had been infatuated with for half my life, and felt nothing but exhaustion and profound weariness. "Move," I said. "Explain yourself." He shot back, not moving an inch. Instead, he grabbed my wrist, a hint of desperation in his grip. "What do you want? All this scheming, isn't it just to get my attention?" "Well, let me tell you, it won't work." His words died in his throat. As we struggled, I lost my balance, my foot slipped, and my elbow and knee slammed hard into the stone lion statue at the KTV entrance. A dull, throbbing pain shot through me, and I gasped sharply. Yichuan clearly hadn't expected this. He froze for a second, a flicker of panic and guilt crossing his face. He reached out a hand, intending to help me up. At that very moment, classmates began trickling out, the party having apparently ended on a sour note. Pan Yu's eyes immediately landed on Yichuan's hand reaching for me and my somewhat disheveled state as I sat on the ground. Her face instantly flooded with panic and hurt. She threw herself into Yichuan's arms, clinging tightly to his waist, and cried out in a choked voice, "Yichuan, don't fight her because of me. I'm fine. So what if my dress is torn?" Her voice was sharp and piercing. All the classmates who had been in the dark now understood. Yichuan had gotten physical with me for Pan Yu's sake. Yichuan's outstretched hand froze in midair, caught in an awkward limbo between offering support and withdrawing it. He tried to push Pan Yu away to explain himself, but she only clung tighter, her sobs growing more desperate. The other students' gazes turned curious and knowing, and a wave of hushed whispers began to ripple through the crowd. Watching the look of utter helplessness and frantic anxiety on his face, I found the whole situation utterly absurd. I slowly got to my feet on my own, brushing the dust off my clothes. My elbows and knees ached, and my palms were scraped raw, the blood glistening clearly under the streetlight. I held them up in front of Yichuan. "Take a good look. You did this. You were decent to me once, too. Fine. This makes us even. We're square now." No one else could grasp my meaning, but Yichuan understood. Across 2 lifetimes, I have now drawn a definitive line between him and me. The color drained from Yichuan's face, but the guilt in his eyes was shattered before it could fully form. Crushed by the sheer resolve and disgust I displayed, in its place rose a furious, humiliated rage at being publicly shamed. "Qin Shiyun." A vein throbbed at his temple as he pushed Pan Yu aside and took a step forward. "You're so noble, you're so impressive. You think you can find happiness with another man. Let me tell you, that's nothing but his momentary gratitude." Yichuan, a cold, sharp shout cut off his unfinished tirade. Ji Zhuiyan strode quickly from the shadows nearby. He positioned himself between me and Yichuan, blocking his line of sight, then turned and carefully cradled my hand in his. After a glance, his brow furrowed deeply. "I'm taking you to the hospital." Without another word, he gently supported my back with one hand, carefully avoiding my wound with the other, shielding me as he turned and led me away. The entire time, He never glanced back at Yichuan, as if he were nothing more than trash on the side of the road. Shielding me, he guided me toward the taxi waiting by the curb. Behind us were Yichuan's rigid, frozen figure, Pan Yu's bewildered sobs, and the complicated gazes of our classmates. A night breeze swept through, carrying the first cool hint of the late summer's end. The cut in my palm stung, but a ray of light seemed to pierce the desolation that had settled in my heart for far too long. 7. The hospital reeked of antiseptic. The emergency room wasn't crowded. The doctor examined my wounds, just abrasions on my palm and elbow that needed cleaning, disinfecting, and bandaging. I took a pretty hard knock to the knee, and it's badly bruised. At least nothing's broken. The wound cleaning stung a bit. I gritted my teeth and didn't make a sound. Ji Juiyan stayed right by my side the whole time, watching the nurse work, his brow furrowed tight. Young man, how are you looking after your girlfriend? The older nurse chided Ji Juiyan lightly but pointedly after finishing the bandaging. That's quite a knock. It's lucky nothing's broken. You'll need to be more careful from now on. Ji Juiyan didn't offer any excuses. He just lowered his eyes and replied with utter seriousness. Yes, there won't be a next time. His tone was far too solemn. The nurse gave him a look and said nothing more. Once bandaged, I walked out of the emergency room into the quiet hallway. Ji Juiyan went to the vending machine, bought a bottle of water, unscrewed the cap, and handed it to me. I took it, sipping slowly. The lukewarm water slid down my throat, soothing the inexplicable tightness I felt there. Does it still hurt? He asked. No, I said, shaking my head. He was silent for a moment, his gaze falling on my hand, which was wrapped in white bandages. I should have been there sooner, he said quietly, his voice full of self-reproach. I shouldn't have let you face that alone. It's none of your business, I said. It's my own, ill-fated entanglement. The word felt unexpectedly fitting in this context. He fell silent again for a moment. Then, as if having made up his mind, he turned to look at me with great seriousness. Qin Shiyun, given your usual performance and your estimated score on the college entrance exam, your first choice university is a sure thing, he said, speaking slowly and enunciating each word clearly. We can go to the same university. I looked up at him. My reflection was in his eyes. And then, he paused, his Adam's apple bobbing slightly. University lasts 4 years. We could attend classes together, spend time in the library together, eat in the cafeteria together, take walks on the sports field together. After graduation, if you're willing, we can get married, or, if you want to pursue further studies, I'll be with you. If you want to work, I'll support you. You can do whatever you want. His voice wasn't loud, yet it painted a picture of a future that seemed almost within reach. I was just about to reply when I caught a glimpse of a familiar figure at the corner of the staircase from the corner of my eye. It was Yichuan. Perhaps a final shred of remorse lingered, but he dared not step inside. I mustered my courage and asked again, Ji Juiyan, are you being so good to me because I called for help when you were at the beach? Do you feel you have no way to repay me, so you're offering yourself? He finished my sentence, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly. Yet his gaze remained earnest. He shook his head. Qin Shiyun, let me answer this question for you one more time. I know the difference between gratitude and affection perfectly well. Gratitude is feeling like I owe you a debt of kindness, wanting to be good to you. But affection, right here, he gently tapped the spot over his heart. It burns. It's missing you when you're not around, feeling happy just seeing you. When you're sad, I feel worse than you do. If you're hurt, I wish I could take the pain for you. It's seeing you stand next to someone else, and feeling a sour ache here, getting restless, becoming insecure. He smiled self-deprecatingly. Just like tonight, seeing you hurt. It felt like a knot twisting in my chest. I know you might still need time, that you might not have completely let go of the past. That's okay, I can wait. I just wanted to tell you how I feel. To lay out the best future I can imagine right in front of you. Take your time choosing. But I have to be one of the options. His words dispelled the last of the shadows and uncertainty in my heart. I believe Yichuan heard and took in every single word. I looked at Ji Juiyan's earnest expression, at his eyes brimming with sincerity and anticipation. In my past life, I was always a blur in Yichuan's eyes, an obligation he felt forced to bear. But now, in Ji Juiyan's eyes, I see myself clearly, cherished, desired, and placed solemnly at the very center of his future. My eyes suddenly grew warm. I sniffed, pushing back the surge of emotion. Then, I nodded. It was a slight motion, but firm. Okay. Ji Juiyan's eyes instantly lit up, dazzlingly bright. The corners of his mouth lifted uncontrollably into a wide, beaming smile. You're saying yes, right? He still seemed a bit unable to believe it. I smiled too. Out of all the options, I choose you." He shot to his feet, flustered, and turned in a small, helpless circle before remembering something. Fumbling, he began digging through his pockets. After a moment, he pulled out a small, deep blue velvet box. He took a deep breath and opened the box. Inside were 2 simple platinum rings, with tiny characters engraved on the inside. I bought these a while ago," he said, his ears tinged with red. Though he was trying hard to stay composed, "I was going to wait for your birthday, or, find a more formal occasion, but just now, I suddenly felt, it has to be now." He picked up the smaller ring and looked up at me, his eyes full of a questioning, hopeful anticipation. "May I?" I reached out my hand, my fingertips trembling slightly with emotion. He slowly slid the ring onto the base of my ring finger. The fit was perfect. The cool touch of the metal was soon warmed by my body heat. He held my hand, gazing at it for a long moment. Before finally handing me the other ring and offering his own hand, I mimicked his gesture and slipped it onto his finger. The moment the ring was in place, his fingers tightened, enveloping my hand completely in his palm. It was warm, solid, and held with an unmistakable strength. "Ji Juiyan," I said, looking at our joined hands, the ring on my finger catching a faint glimmer of light. "Will we always be like this?" "Yes," he answered without a moment's hesitation. Then drew me gently into his arms. It was a restrained yet warm embrace, carrying the scent of antiseptic and his own clean, familiar smell. "I promise." His voice was low and clear, a whisper in my ear. "We'll get through this, together." The sound of a nurse calling numbers for prescriptions echoed from down the hall. We pulled apart and shared a knowing smile. I forgot to look at Yichuan's reaction after that. I couldn't help it. My heart was pounding so hard. There was no room in my world for anyone else. 8. The day the acceptance letter arrived, the atmosphere at home was like Chinese New Year. I got into my first choice school, just as I had hoped. That prestigious comprehensive university in the north was my choice, based on my own interests and capabilities, not made to follow in anyone's footsteps. My parents were over the moon. Mom immediately wanted to call and book a restaurant to celebrate. My brother snapped a photo of my acceptance letter and posted it 3 times in a row on his social media, each caption bragging about his little sister. I was in the living room discussing with my parents whether to go to the campus early to get familiar with the area when the doorbell rang. My brother went to answer the door, and standing outside was Yichuan. He didn't look well. He had dark circles under his eyes. His beard was unkempt, and he appeared rather haggard. He stared straight at me in the living room. "Xiaoshi, can you come out for a moment?" His voice was strained. The smiles on my parents' faces faded slightly as they exchanged a glance. My brother blocked the doorway, his tone unfriendly. "Yichuan, what do you want?" "I'm here for Xiaoshi," Yichuan insisted, his gaze fixed on me over my brother's shoulder. I set down the brochure in my hand, stood up, and walked over. "It's okay, bro." I walked with Yichuan to a quiet spot downstairs. The late summer sun was still fierce, baking the ground until it was hot to the touch. He turned around, clutching his phone. The screen was lit up, displaying a screenshot of my brother's social media post. His knuckles were white from the strain. "Why?" he asked, his voice thick with suppressed emotion. "Why change your application? In our last life, didn't you come with me to X university in the south? What era does he think this is? He still believes I'd go south with him. Besides, he's already gotten his happy ending with his white moonlight. Why should he care where I go? Does he need me there as a backdrop to set the mood?" I said flatly, "I don't like the south." He was taken aback. "You don't? You never said that, didn't I?" I gave a light laugh. "Or did I say it, and you just never paid any attention?" "Yichuan, during those 4 years in the south in my past life, I had allergies every spring. I couldn't sleep all night, covered in rashes. The summers were muggy and stifling like a steamer basket. In winter, with no heating, it was colder indoors than out. My hands and feet got frostbite so bad I could barely hold a pen to do my homework. With every word I spoke, the color drained further from his face. I never complained to him about these details. Back then, I believed that for the sake of love, I could endure all these hardships. Voicing them felt melodramatic. The cafeteria food was too sweet. I never got used to it in 4 years, and my stomach was always upset. I couldn't understand the local teachers' accents, struggled with my major courses, and missed out on so many opportunities. "You never noticed any of this, did you?" He clenched his jaw. "I thought it was a noble sacrifice for love." I shook my head. Now I realize it was just self-indulgent sentimentality, sheer foolishness. So in this life, I'm going to live where I want, where I can breathe easily and live comfortably. Yichuan's eyes reddened. It was as if only in this moment did he truly grasp what I had silently endured in my past life, and he, as my closest partner, had been completely oblivious. "I'm sorry, Xiaosher. I'm so sorry," he repeated over and over. "I didn't know. I truly didn't know. I thought you were doing well." "Of course you didn't know," I cut him off, my tone still calm, "because you never wanted to know." "That's not true." He tried to defend himself, but couldn't form a complete sentence. The marriage that came later was one of gratitude, of duty, anything but love. That truth was now painfully, brutally clear. "It's all in the past now," I said finally, as if delivering a closing statement. "Yichuan, I've chosen the path I want to walk. I wish you smooth sailing in the future." With that, I turned to leave. "Xiaosher," his voice rose sharply, laced with a final, desperate struggle and unwillingness. Will you regret it, giving up what we had for 2 lifetimes?" "No," I answered, resolute and unwavering. "I feel nothing but relief. Relief that my brother is alive. Relief that I woke up in time. Relief that I was given a chance to choose again." I turned and headed back, my steps light and brisk. The sun shone down on me, warm and comforting. As I neared the entrance to my building unit, another figure hurried over from the side, carrying several elegant gift boxes and a brand new silver-gray suitcase. It was Ji Zhuyan. He was dressed simply in a white t-shirt and jeans, looking fresh and clean. When he saw me, his eyes immediately crinkled into a smile. I was just about to head up. He approached, glancing at my hand. "Does the wound still hurt?" "It stopped hurting a long time ago," I said. Only then did he notice Yichuan standing rigidly not far behind me. His smile faded slightly, but held no hostility or provocation. He simply averted his gaze, as if Yichuan were just some insignificant passerby. "Are your parents and brother home? I brought a few things. We can take them up together." He gave the gift box in his hand a little shake, then pointed at the suitcase. "And this one, it's a matching set. Mine's the black one. I'll come help you pack before the semester starts. I'm a pro at packing." His voice was pitched just right, perfectly audible to the people over there. Yichuan's body visibly swayed. His gaze was locked on Ji Zhuyan, on the unmistakably paired suitcases in his hand, on the natural, intimate ease between him and me, on the completely unguarded, relaxed smile on my face. Then, his gaze fixed on my hand as I reached out to take the gift box. The simple platinum ring on my ring finger caught the sunlight, reflecting a faint yet piercing glint. He finally understood. It wasn't just about the changed plans. The person, too, was completely different. He just stood there, watching Ji Zhuyan and me walk into the building entrance, chatting and laughing together. The elevator doors slowly closed, finally shutting out the sight of Yichuan standing desolately under the blazing sun, a figure who looked utterly forsaken by the world. Inside the elevator, Ji Zhuyan gently squeezed my hand. The elevator ascends, the numbers climb, my heart is calm, a still pond. A new journey is truly about to begin, with the right person by my side. 9. The first time Ji Zhuyan officially came to my house for dinner as my boyfriend, the atmosphere was even better than I could have imagined. My parents were absolutely delighted with him, my brother hit it off with him, and the dinner table was filled with constant laughter. The gifts Ji Zhuyan brought were so thoughtful. Tea for dad, a silk scarf for mom, and a game controller for my brother, each one perfectly suited to their tastes. After dinner, Mom suggested I take Ji Zhuyan to my room to relax and have some fruit. My room isn't large. One entire wall is taken up by a bookcase, crammed full of books and various bits and pieces. Ji Zhuyan looked around with keen interest, as if exploring a fascinating treasure trove. He pulled out an album from my childhood and flipped through it, chuckling at my silly younger self. Then he picked up a little knick-knack from my shelf and asked about its story, until his gaze finally settled on the very top shelf of the bookcase. In a rather inconspicuous corner, a simple wooden photo frame was propped there at an angle, its back facing out. Being tall, he reached out and took it down. When he turned it over, the smile on his face faltered slightly. It was that photo from when I was 4. I was sitting on a swing, holding a melting ice cream cone, while Yichuan leaned in next to me, trying to lick the back of my hand. The sunlight was warm, and the expressions on both children's faces were innocent and naive. Ji Zhuyan stared at the photo for several seconds, then gently placed it face down on the desk. He didn't say a word, just took my hand, lowered his head, and gave the tip of my index finger a firm, deliberate bite. A sharp sting shot through me. "Ouch," I hissed, pulling my hand back. "What are you, a dog?" "Woof," he replied, looking up at me. His eyes were dark, tinged with a hint of hurt. "I'm jealous." He pointed at the face-down photo. "I hate that I wasn't your childhood sweetheart, that I wasn't part of your past." That picture, It's really grating on me. Seeing his undisguised jealousy, my heart softened a little. I was rather touched by such frank concern. That was all a long time ago. From now on, we'll just make new memories to overwrite the old ones. His expression cleared slightly as he moved closer to hug me, resting his chin on my shoulder and saying in a muffled voice, "You're right. We'll take photos every year from now on, lots of them, until the album is full." We held each other quietly for a while. I could sense he still had something more to say. "What's wrong?" I asked. "You've seemed a bit distracted since we started eating." Ji Xuyan's body stiffened. He let go of me, and his expression grew hesitant and serious. He pulled out his phone, tapped it a few times, and held it out for me to see. "This, I've been hesitating for days, unsure if I should show you." It was a video recorded on a phone, the background a noisy private room. In the center of the video, Panyu sat with a few other stylishly dressed guys and girls, swirling a wine glass in her hand and laughing uproariously. A guy's booming voice cut through. "Panyu, are you and that guy Yichuan for real? I heard you two were going to die for love." Panyu snorted with derision and rolled her eyes. "Die for love, my ass. I just lost a bet. People are always saying Yichuan is head over heels for me, right? So I bet someone that he'd even jump into the sea if I told him to. Who knew he'd actually do it? He almost got himself killed. What an idiot." Another girl chimed in with a laugh. "So after he found out you weren't really serious about the double suicide, how did you two make up?" Panyu curled her lip disdainfully. "He was so easy to reel in. I didn't even need bait. Training him was like training a dog. Just a little treat and he'd come wagging his tail. But it's getting annoying now. He's clingy, sticks to me like glue, and I can't shake him off. I should have known better than to take it this far." The video ended there. I held the phone, silent for a long moment. The sound of wind and waves at the seashore, along with Yichuan's bitter, hate-filled last words, came rushing back through my mind once more. So that's how it is, the so-called suicide pact, the so-called unrequited love that haunted him for a lifetime. From start to finish, it was nothing but a cruel joke, a foolish wager. The great love that Yichuan clung to across 2 lifetimes, for which he resented my brother, resented me, wasted his own life and trapped mine. It turns out to be so fragile. So utterly laughable. I can't quite describe what I'm feeling. Part of me wants to laugh, and part of me feels a profound sorrow, for Yichuan, and for my own life that was pointlessly sacrificed. "Xuyan," I took a deep breath and handed the phone back to him. "Are you afraid that if I see this, I'll feel sorry for him, that I'll go back to him?" Ji Xuyan looked at me, his eyes filled with worry and nervousness. "I don't know. I was afraid you'd be upset, after all. You two shared such a long history." I shook my head and took his hand in mine. His palm was warm and dry. "I won't go back." I looked at him and said earnestly, "Ji Xuyan, I'm upset not because I still care for him, but because I feel the past wasn't worth it, and that's all there is to it. As for this video," I paused, "let's just pretend we never saw it. Whether his obsession is real or imagined, whether his white moonlight is an angel or a ghost, it's none of my business. He chose this path, and he can live with the consequences." Ji Xuyan's tense shoulders finally relaxed. He gripped my hand in return, his hold a bit too tight. "It's my fault," he said quietly. "I shouldn't have let my imagination run wild. It's just, sometimes I get scared." "Scared of what?" "You're just too good for me. I'm afraid I can't hold on to you," he said, revealing a vulnerable side. "I'm afraid you'll compare. Afraid you'll think, after all, he was your childhood sweetheart." "Ji Xuyan," I interrupted him, raising our clasped hands so he could see the matching rings. "Look, these represent our present and our future. That," I pointed at the photo album, "is just dust from the past. A good relationship isn't one free from insecurity and fear of loss," I said, looking at him earnestly. "It's one where, even with those fears, you still choose to trust, and you're willing to work together to minimize the chance of ever losing each other." I used to get criticized all the time. Yichuan would say I was too clingy, too insecure. Now I understand. It wasn't that I wasn't good enough. It was that the other person wasn't right. A sense of security is something two people build together. I leaned in close to Ji Xuyan, gently touching my forehead to his. "Let's work together to give each other enough security." Ji Xuyan didn't say a word. He just gently kissed my lips. 10. For our graduation trip, Ji Xuyan and I went to see the desert and the grottos I'd always wanted to visit. On the day of our return, the flight was delayed, and it was already late at night by the time I got home. My parents were still up, waiting for me. We chatted for a while and had a late-night snack. After I took a shower, I noticed my mother seemed to be holding something back. "What's wrong, Mom?" "Well, Yichuan came by this evening," Mom sighed. "He waited for a long time and only left when it was clear you weren't coming back. He didn't look well at all. He's become terribly thin. He insisted he had to speak with you in person. I didn't promise him anything. Just said you were traveling and your return date was uncertain. My hand, which was drying my hair, paused for a moment before I resumed naturally. I see. What was bound to happen, would happen. I just hadn't expected him to find out so quickly, sure enough. The doorbell rang again the next afternoon. Yi Chuan's face was pale and haggard, with sunken eyes. He looked even worse than my mother had described. I opened the door but didn't let him in. Instead, I stepped out and closed it behind me. We stood by the drafty window in the hallway. He held up his phone. The screen showed a screenshot of a WeChat chat log, dense with text. I glanced at it and saw a conversation where Pan Yu and her friend were making fun of Yi Chuan. It corroborated the video content Ji Xuyen had shown me. Pan Yu, she made a bet with someone. She was playing me. His eyes were bloodshot and red, his voice choked with a sob of utter devastation. There was never any suicide pact. She's been lying to me the whole time, making a fool out of me. I'm such an idiot. For 2 lifetimes I've been a complete fool. He sank to a crouch, burying his face in his hands. His shoulders heaved violently as he let out a raw, animalistic sob. It was the despair of having one's entire belief system shattered, of having one's whole life rendered meaningless. He wept for a long time before he could finally lift his head, his face streaked with tears, a picture of utter misery. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with a regret I had never seen before. Xiaoshi, I was wrong. I was truly wrong. He stammered incoherently. I regretted it even in my past life. I just didn't dare admit it. In this life, I regret it even more. I shouldn't have treated you like that. He pulled a crumpled makeup coupon from his pocket, the one I had written for him when we were children. I didn't pick up. He clutched desperately at my pant leg, like a drowning man grasping for driftwood. Come back, please. I don't care about what happened between you and Ji Xuyen. I don't. Just come back, and we can start over. I swear I'll treat you right this time. I'll make it up to you. I'll give you everything I have. His gaze was a mix of abject desperation and feverish intensity, tinged with an unhealthy obsession. I waited for him to calm down a little before speaking slowly. Yi Chuan, I don't want a fish from someone else's pond, nor a dog trained by another master. He flinched violently. In our past life, I tried. Some things just can't be tamed. I continued. Remember, that photo album at the very bottom of your study drawer, the one disguised with a high school textbook cover. You thought I never went through your things, but I saw it long ago. I thought you were nostalgic for your youth. It was only later I realized you were nostalgic for her. Every year, without fail, you'd fly to Australia twice. You told me it was because you loved the Gold Coast, and I believed you. It wasn't until right before you died that I found out it was because Pan Yu had immigrated to Melbourne. You flew there just to be in the same city, to glimpse the world she lived in from afar. But my body, at least, was faithful to you. I didn't waver in the slightest. I didn't know you carried someone else in your heart. If I had, I wouldn't have been so foolish as to trap you for a lifetime. A clean, dignified breakup, letting us both find our own happiness. Wouldn't that have been better? But you kept it hidden. You played the part of the devoted man repaying a debt, all while preserving your spiritual chastity for her. And in the end, you still believed my brother, and I used that debt to shackle you, to ruin your life. Yi Chuan, don't make yourself out to be some kind of martyr. I leaned in slightly, looking him in the eye. You're not staying in this marriage just out of some sense of obligation. It's because you know I'm the most suitable wife. I'm sensible, low maintenance. I can hold your family together, take care of your parents, and let you keep up the act of the devoted husband, wallowing in your own self-pity. This is a calculated choice, not a sacrifice. He slumped to the floor, looking up at me, his lips trembling as he tried to form a rebuttal. But he realized every single word I'd said was the brutal, unvarnished truth. As for now, I straightened up, gazing at the bright sunshine outside the window. It's only with Ji Xuyen that I've finally learned what real love is supposed to feel like. True love isn't about one-sided sacrifice or enduring hardship, nor is it about living in someone else's shadow. It's about mutual recognition and nourishment. Two people coming together and becoming the best versions of themselves. I averted my gaze, letting it fall upon his ashen face. Yi Chuan, don't come looking for me again. Your regrets, your tears, they mean nothing to me now. I want to love someone who was good from the start, not someone who only became decent after a belated awakening. What was between us ended long ago, the moment we spent 40 years clinging to a lie, and the moment I heard the resentment in your voice. In this life, saving you was never my intention, so, we owe each other nothing. I finished speaking, turned away without another glance, and went back inside. From behind me came Yichuan's broken sobs, followed by the sound of my father and brother forcibly hauling him away. The door closed. That chapter of the past, so full of resentment and desolation, was finally over. The days slipped by in a flash. Ji Zhuyan and I went to the same university, just as he had described. We attended classes together, spent hours in the library, debated over which cafeteria window had the best food, and strolled down the plain tree-lined paths in autumn, crunching through fallen leaves. He studied economics and management, while I majored in literature. We each worked hard in our own fields, yet shared every joy and worry with one another. We would debate over the solution to a problem, and be moved together by the plot of a movie. He'd drag me to enter a startup competition, and I'd pull him along to see plays and art exhibitions. A good relationship truly nourishes the soul. I became more outgoing and confident, while he grew more steady and understanding. We are like two stars orbiting each other, shining in our own paths, yet forming a more stable system because of each other's gravity. After graduating from university, he took over part of the family business. It was a hectic start, but he was full of drive. I went on to graduate school, renting a small apartment near campus where I got a cat and a dog. Life gradually settled into the rhythm of small, concrete details. On weekends, we'd go grocery shopping together, debating whether to have hot pot or steak for dinner. In the evenings, we'd take the dog for a jog in the park, watching the sunset stretch our shadows long. When I pulled all-nighters writing my thesis, he'd bring me warm milk and cut up fruit. If he came home late from a business dinner, I'd leave a light on and have some hangover soup ready for him, ordinary and mundane, yet brimming with a profound sense of happiness. In the third year after graduation, we got married. The wedding was simple, with only our closest family and friends in attendance. When we exchanged rings, we both laughed, because our ring fingers already bore tokens from each other. A few more years passed, and our two families, the Yes and ours, had a rare reunion to go skiing for the new year. By then, Ji Zhuyan and I had already traveled through over a dozen countries together and were planning our next adventure, a trip to Antarctica. Yichuan arrived as well, accompanied by his wife and a little boy of about 3 or 4. His wife seemed gentle and quiet, speaking little, and was focused on looking after the child. Yichuan had changed a great deal. Barely in his 30s, he already had flecks of gray at his temples, and his eyes held a lingering gloom and weariness. I heard that he and Panyu had maintained a long-distance relationship for a while in college, but it didn't last long. Soon after Panyu went abroad, she found someone new. Refusing to accept defeat, he followed her abroad, only to get beaten up by her boyfriend and end up in the hospital for a long time. After returning home, he fell into a deep depression, neglected his studies, barely graduated, and landed a job through family connections. Later, he got married through a matchmaking arrangement. At the dinner table, the adults were chatting. Yichuan's wife was carefully feeding their child, who was being a bit fussy. Ji Zhuyan and I were sitting on the other side. He was quietly discussing a minor issue with his ski binding with me, saying we should get it adjusted at the shop tomorrow. We were sitting very close, our posture intimate and natural. Yichuan's gaze kept drifting over, at me, at Ji Zhuyan, at our hands clasped together on the table, at the unspoken understanding in our exchanged smiles. His wife seemed to notice. She lowered her head and quietly wiped her child's mouth. The next day was free time. Ji Zhuyan and I skied all morning, then had hot chocolate on the terrace outside the mountain restaurant at noon. At some point, Yichuan walked over, a cigarette between his fingers. "Xiaoshi, can we talk alone for a minute?" he asked, his voice sounding a little strained. Ji Zhuyan glanced at me, and I nodded. He patted my shoulder and stood up. "I'm going to check out the new snowboards over there," he said, giving us space but not going far. Stationing himself somewhere he could still see us, Yichuan sat down opposite me, lit a cigarette, and took a deep drag. The smoke curled upwards in the crisp, cold air. A long silence followed. "You all seem well," he finally spoke. "Yes, we are," I admitted frankly. He fell silent again, his gaze piercing through the haze, fixed on the endless snow-capped peaks and the azure sky behind me. "Mimi," he suddenly uttered the name, his voice soft and trembling. My hand holding the cup paused ever so slightly. "Mimi, our daughter from our past life. She was sweet, sensible, and had 2 dimples when she smiled. Do you miss her?" he asked, his gaze turning back to fix intently on me. I thought for a moment and answered honestly, "I do, sometimes, very much." A faint glimmer flickered in his eyes. "But she deserves to grow up in a home with more love," I continued, my tone calm. "Shuyan and I aren't planning on having children for now. We have travel plans for over a dozen countries we want to experience together first. If we ever do have a child, it will be a completely new life, a whole new story, not a replacement for anyone. The light in Yichuan's eyes went out. He tugged at the corner of his mouth, as if trying to smile, but it didn't quite form, leaving only bitterness. Yeah, a whole new story, he murmured, taking another drag of his cigarette. The smoke blurred his expression. As long as you're happy, you too, I said. Be good to your wife and your child. He gave a slight start, but said nothing, just crushed out his cigarette with a sharp, final motion. I should go, I said, getting to my feet. He nodded, not looking up at me. I turned and walked towards Ji Zhuyan. He immediately came forward to meet me, taking my hand and tucking it naturally into his warm coat pocket. Are you cold? He asked. Not at all. We walked away side by side, heading for the cable car station. After we had gone a long way, I glanced back over my shoulder. Yichuan remained seated there, motionless, like a statue frozen in time. Snowflakes began to fall again, swirling thick and fast, through the thickening curtain of snow and the wispy haze. His figure grew blurred and solitary, gradually merging with the vast, white landscape. It was as if his life, too, had long been trapped in a self-inflicted winter from which there was no escape, and I, with my hand held tightly by the person beside me, was walking toward a bright and sunny spring. Story 2. At the age of 7, my brother was busy chasing after the poor student, which led to me being abducted. By the time I finally made it back home, the poor student had already become the fake heiress. She was dressed in an expensive princess dress, pinching her nose and looking at me with disdain. She smells so bad. Could she have some contagious disease? Just like that, the way my parents looked at me changed, and my brother's face was full of disgust. Why did you come back to disturb our lives? That's when I found out the fake heiress was also my sister-in-law. In the end, I was tortured to death by the fake heiress, while my parents and brother turned a blind eye. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the year I was 5 years old. That year, my parents' competitors targeted my brother, planning to kidnap him to force my parents into submission. This time, I chose to turn a blind eye. Useless brother and biased parents, go to hell together. 1. Little girl, go tell your parents to give up on this project, or your brother will never come back. A middle-aged man wearing a baseball cap and a mask snarled at me. He was tightly gripping my brother in his hand. At that time, my brother was still just a kid, not tall, not big, and not malicious. The look in his eyes held no ferocity, only fear and pleading. The jeans embroidered with Ultraman were soaked in the middle. Big brother had wet his pants. I feigned a look of terror, nodding vigorously like a chicken pecking at rice. The kidnapper seemed pleased, carrying brother away in a black Honda without even bothering to conceal the license plate. What kind of kidnapper does that? It smells so good. What kind of food is this? I sniffed the air and followed the sweet aroma right to the convenience store entrance, where the colorful cotton candy looked absolutely delicious. By the time I carried the cotton candy home, my parents had already returned. Seeing me alone, they asked in confusion, "Where's your brother?" Taking small licks of the cotton candy, I said in a childish voice, "Dunno, cotton candy yummy, mommy daddy want some." The parents searched the house for a while, then combed through the neighborhood several times, but found no trace of their brother. They grew increasingly anxious and began calling the police. However, during that era without surveillance cameras, tracking down human traffickers was extremely difficult. The police officer questioned doubtfully, "Logically speaking, this shouldn't happen. Your neighborhood has excellent security. Why would human traffickers come here?" I've also asked the guards, and no suspicious individuals were seen entering or exiting. Mom collapsed on the floor wailing, while Dad pulled at his own hair in utter despair. I sat on the flower bed, swinging my little legs, watching them unblinkingly with wide eyes. They look so heartbroken and miserable now, so why were they completely unfazed when they watched me die before their eyes in our past life? Humph, brother's life matters, but mine doesn't. In that case, let's all perish together. 2. That very day, missing person posters of my brother covered every street and alley, even appearing on TV with a 30,000 yuan reward. In those days, 30,000 yuan was a substantial amount of money. I had initially wondered if the kidnappers might come forward voluntarily, but once the missing person notices went up, I knew my brother wouldn't return. There was absolutely no chance of a private settlement anymore. Countless cases, big and small, occur every day, so my brother's case was temporarily set aside. In my past life, because I remembered the license plate number, the police easily found my brother, and his way of repaying me was letting me get kidnapped when I was 7. After all, we're siblings by blood, the same flesh and blood runs through our veins. It's only fair to return the favor, isn't it? gradually revealing my intelligence and talents. I occasionally proposed profitable projects, helping them slowly emerge from the pain of losing their child. Dad happily ruffled my hair. Ningning is truly our lucky star, making mom and dad earn so much money. I giggled sweetly. I saw on TV how big the houses rich people live in are, with swimming pools in front. So impressive. Mom, Dad, let's also move to a bigger house. The neighbors would be wealthy too, and maybe we could network to earn even more money. I've heard people say that social circles are the most important thing. My parents were moved by my words and exchanged glances. Nowadays, our family earns enough to buy a villa, but they still hold on to thoughts of my brother. What if he comes back one day? So I need to sever their hopes and completely erase any trace of my brother from their lives. Dad nodded decisively and said, "All right, we'll listen to Ningning. Social circles are the most important." The next day, my parents went to look at houses and eventually spent a fortune buying a villa in the city center, where all the neighbors were either wealthy or influential figures. Being cute and sweet-tongued, I visited a few nearby households with cookies made by my mom and quickly became friends with them. As a result, my parents secured many projects. Although they didn't make much profit due to low pricing, they managed to build valuable connections. Seizing the opportunity, I suggested, "Mom and Dad, since you're both busy with work and I'm often lonely at home, how about adopting an older brother to keep me company?" Why do I need an older brother? Of course, it's to completely replace my brother's position in our parents' hearts, preventing them from giving him all the credit when he returns due to their favoritism towards sons over daughters. I won't let such a thing happen. No way, I'm doing all the work just for his benefit. Now, my parents dote on me and comply with my every wish, so they naturally won't refuse. 3. You can't choose your parents, so there's nothing you can do even if they're useless. But since this brother can be chosen freely, naturally one would pick someone who's completely satisfactory. I suffer from misanthropy towards foolishness, so those with poor intellect are absolutely unacceptable. Ugly ones won't do either, as they'd ruin my appetite. Most importantly, the personality must be good and the heart kind. I don't want a second ungrateful brother. After visiting all the orphanages in the city, I finally found one that met all the requirements, especially the fierce glint in his eyes, which particularly satisfied me. Having seen all kinds of people and ghosts in my past life, someone like him would be hard to control when grown up, but raising him from a young age brings a great sense of accomplishment. My brother is lost. Can you be my brother? I took out a white rabbit creamy candy from my pocket and placed it in his slender hand, saying in a soft, sweet voice, "I have lots of toys and snacks, and I can share half with you. Would you like to come home with me?" No little boy could resist such an adorable kid like me, and he was no exception. He carefully took the candy from my hand without touching me, as if afraid of dirtying my fingers, but I actively grabbed his hand and proudly showed him off to my parents. "Mom and Dad, I like this big brother." His parents were also very satisfied with his appearance. After asking a few more questions and finding him well-behaved and polite, they agreed. I gave him a new name, Lu Xingchen, because his eyes are as beautiful as stars. He lives in the room across from mine, with the same layout as my room. Originally, my parents had intended it for my older brother, but now he's living there. During meals, he also sat in the lower seat beside his father, the same place where his elder brother used to sit. Gradually, he truly took over his brother's position, and their parents instinctively included him in everything they did, even referring to him as our son in private conversations. At first, my elder brother was somewhat timid, but under my guidance, he became more outgoing and confident. However, perhaps it was because the first impression he had of me was that cute and vulnerable appearance, which left too deep a mark on him. This led to him genuinely protecting me like a little sister. Every night he would tell me fairy tales to lull me to sleep. He would pick the food I didn't like and eat it from his own plate. He even wished he could take the pain from me when I accidentally bumped into the table. 4. In the blink of an eye, high school began, and Lu Xingchen, wrapped in love, began to shine brightly, causing a stir the moment she stepped into the school. Although he was older than me, we were in the same class. This was both our parents' wish and his own, so he could better protect me. At the same time, an old acquaintance, Gu Jiejia, reappeared, the very culprit who had tortured me to death in my past life, the fake heiress. She appeared delicate and fragile, with every smile and frown exuding an air of pitiable charm, especially her watery eyes that made it hard not to feel compassion for her. "Xingchen, look in the 3 o'clock direction. Is that girl pretty?" Lu Xingchen followed my gaze and saw Gu Jiejia wearing a white dress with long, straight black hair. He didn't understand my meaning and said seriously, "I don't know, Maybe she's the type boys like. She's not just the type boys like, she's the type my brother is utterly infatuated with. The kind he'd watch his own sister suffer in agony for, leaving her neither able to live nor die. I licked my lips and asked, "Do you like this type?" A flicker of disgust flashed in his eyes, yet his expression remained composed. "I don't like it," I scoffed. "Then what kind do you like?" He looked down at me, raised an eyebrow, and said, "I like the spoiled, willful, domineering, and unreasonable ones." Me, Gu Jiejia and I were classmates. She wasn't admitted through regular exams, but as a special enrollment student, specifically, a financially disadvantaged student, every year. Elite schools admit a few financially disadvantaged students to showcase their tradition of not discriminating based on family background. In reality, these students often end up being bullied here. Since most attendees are either heirs or children of the wealthy, in my past life, because my older brother protected her, she was able to swagger around here without fear, but this time Big Brother isn't here. Let's see how she acts up. The first class was self-introductions. Everyone took turns going on stage confidently without stage fright, having experienced big occasions before. Naturally they weren't afraid. When it was Gu Jiejia's turn, her little face flushed red as she hesitated shyly. Too embarrassed to go on stage. I am too shy. The teacher smiled and said, "It's alright. It's everyone's first time meeting. Don't be nervous. Let's give a warm round of applause." Classmates, the students started clapping one after another. Seeing that I wasn't moving, Lu Xingchen also refrained from applauding. But after 3 rounds of applause, everyone was growing impatient. Gu Jiejia still hadn't stepped onto the stage. Biting her lips, her face turning even redder. With tears welling up in her eyes, "What a useless thing, can't even handle the spotlight." 5. After this incident, everyone naturally distanced themselves from Gu Jiejia, finding her utterly repulsive, crying at the drop of a hat. Outsiders would think someone bullied her. How disgusting. Exactly. Because of her time wasting, we didn't even have time to go to the bathroom after class. So annoying. When assigning seats later, I really hope I don't get paired with her. Such bad luck would ruin my aura. Everyone's voices weren't lowered, and Gu Jiejia heard everything clearly, so she ran to the teacher's office to report it. Such behavior might be tolerable in an ordinary school, but in a prestigious academy, it's practically asking for trouble. Classmate Gu Jiejia has special circumstances, so everyone should be more accommodating towards her. Is there any classmate willing to sit with Gu Jiejia? She's quite timid, and with someone looking after her, she'll quickly adapt to the school environment. After waiting for a long time without any classmates raising their hands, what came instead was a wave of mocking laughter. The teacher cleared her throat lightly and asked, "Classmate Gu Jiejia, who would you like to sit with?" At this point, Gu Jiejia didn't hesitate anymore. Pointing at Lu Xingchen, she said, "I want to sit with Brother Xingchen." The way she called him Brother Xingchen was extremely coy, making those who didn't know them think they were very close. The boys erupted in teasing sounds, while the girls all looked utterly disdainful. The teacher nodded. "All right then, student Lu Xingchen, you'll sit with Gu Jiejia from now on. Take good care of her." Lu Xingchen refused directly. "Sorry teacher. I'm allergic to tears." The classroom fell silent for a few seconds before erupting in laughter. I also curled my lips slightly. His words could be quite sharp-tongued. The teacher frowned slightly, knowing it was an excuse, but since he was nominally the heir of the Lu group, he didn't dare offend him. Thus, he had no choice but to find a girl who seemed more approachable to sit with. After class, Gu Jiejia came looking for Lu Xingchen. She said pitifully, "Brother Xingchen, I didn't mean to put you in a difficult position earlier. I just thought you looked very familiar, as if I've seen you somewhere before." No wonder my brother was completely wrapped around her finger in our past life. Her methods are indeed effective. Standing firm on stage satisfies a guy's vanity. If that doesn't work, then lower your guard in private and play the emotional card. An ordinary guy would probably be won over by this. But Lu Xingchen remains unmoved. "Are you a pigeon? Calling me brother every other word." Gu Jiejia's eyes reddened again as she bit her lip. "Brother Xingchen, do you have some misunderstanding about me? Or did you hear someone speaking ill of me? I've had a tough family situation since childhood, and everyone looked down on me. I just want to make friends and not feel so lonely." Lu Xingchen scoffed. "Then you should try making friends with girls, shouldn't you?" Gu Jiejia blurted out. "Girls are too much trouble. I prefer hanging out with boys. It's more straightforward and enjoyable without all the scheming." 6. The classroom instantly erupted with a chorus of boos from the girls. This White Lotus clearly had some green tea bitch attributes. "Don't play the innocent fox with me. We're both old hands at this game." Lu Xingchen curled his lips in a cold smile. I don't believe all women are as you described, except for you, of course. Even with her thick skin, Gu Jiejie couldn't stay any longer, flushing red. She returned to her seat and burst into tears with her face buried in her arms, but no one went to comfort her. They all just laughed at her. What a toad lusting after a swan's flesh. Can't she see how obviously he's rejecting her, still throwing herself at him just to be humiliated? Who says otherwise? The heir to the Lu group is someone she could ever dream of. They say women are scheming, but hers takes the cake. Lu Xingchen appears gentle and refined on the surface. But who knew he'd be such an expert at spotting gold diggers? Propping my chin, I finished enjoying the spectacle before asking with a smile, Xingchen, this is the first time I've seen you be so sarcastic. He unscrewed the thermos for me and gestured for me to drink. The people you don't like, I don't like either. I took small sips of water and chuckled lightly. Liar, you obviously didn't like her yourself. He raised an eyebrow. Somewhat surprised, you noticed. I blinked and asked. Why don't you like her? He pondered seriously for a moment. Her eyes are full of calculation and greed. Indeed, a brother chosen by oneself is far smarter than one with no choice. Gu Jiejie began to be isolated and ostracized, with no one speaking to her anymore. Even when she initiated conversations, people ignored her. They even sarcastically remarked, I'm a girl with deep schemes, you should find a guy instead. The boys sneered and said, we can't compare to the heir of the Lu group. You should go find him. Logically, after reaching this point, one would usually stop making a fuss, attend classes obediently, and eventually be forgiven by everyone after some time, but her thought process was unusual. During the basketball game, she took the initiative to bring water to Lu Xingchen. Brother Xingchen, you play basketball so well. The whole school was watching, and boys from other classes were laughing and egging her on from the sidelines. It seemed like she was trying to emotionally manipulate Lu Xingchen, or perhaps gain sympathy from everyone. Since many students from other classes didn't know the full story, Lu Xingchen sneered, no matter how well I play, it's not for you to see. Take fewer glances. After taking a few steps, he turned back and added, I don't know how many good brothers you have, but I'm certainly not one of them. Please stop calling me that. Thank you. With that, he walked straight toward me. Noticing me lazily watching the commotion from the side, he snatched the half-drunk water bottle from my hand and took a sip. After finishing, he handed the empty bottle back to me and asked, were you looking at her or at me? I took the water bottle and teased with a smile, how do you manage to never take her bait? Lu Xingchen scoffed, do you think all men in the world are fools? Her intentions are so obvious. Who would actually take the bait? Many did take the bait. Like my brother in my past life, and even mom and dad, with all their experience reading people, how could they not see through such obvious tricks? There's only one reason. They thought she was more important than me. 7. After the basketball game, Lu Xingchen gained a fan club, all consisting of his little admirers. When we met in the restroom, I casually remarked, that girl from our class keeps pestering my brother every day, and he's utterly annoyed. How can a girl be so thick-skinned? No matter how he rejects her, it's useless, and it's seriously affecting my brother's studies. If only someone could stop her. Sigh. That afternoon, Gu Jiejie emerged from the bathroom completely drenched. She knew she had angered everyone and didn't dare report it to the teacher. I despise school bullying and have even helped rescue other girls before. But only when seeing Gu Jiejie being bullied do I feel an intense sense of pleasure. After being targeted for half a month, Gu Jiejie finally backed down and never dared to pester Lu Xingchen again. But Lu Xingchen began to frequently cross paths with Gu Jiejie, allowing others to continue misunderstanding, which led to everyone persistently bullying Gu Jiejie. Eventually, she proactively requested a class transfer from the teacher and moved to the grades underperforming class, finally putting an end to the turmoil. The underperforming class had a spoiled rich second-generation student who was handsome but had a wild lifestyle. After seeing Gu Jiejie enter the restroom, I leisurely followed her in with the other girls from our class. Qingyi is quite handsome. Go ask him if he has a girlfriend for me. Wow, even our Miss Lu has developed feelings for someone. But he's really handsome and comes from a wealthy family. He must be hard to get. He looks so wild, but I really like that vibe. Exactly. I like him too. I think he's even more exciting than your brother. Soon Gu Jiejie started dating Qingyi, and she often flaunted their relationship in front of me. Every time I turned away to avoid bursting into laughter, she mistook it for sadness, which only made her more smug. Soon, the scandalous photos of Gu Jiejie and Qingyi began circulating within a small circle of male students. Coming from a family that owned entertainment venues, Qingyi was exposed to wilder scenes from an early age. He often engaged in group activities, accepting partners of all ages, his motto being pure thrill. While I was admiring the photos, Lu Xingchen appeared behind me, snatched my phone, and blushed furiously after just one glance. What do you think of these things? I chuckled lightly. You want to see too? Then let's watch together. After seeing the protagonist, Lu Xingchen silently returned the phone to me. 8. In the blink of an eye, Gu Jiejie had already undergone 6 abortions for Qingyi. The pitiful white lotus image she once had completely vanished, replaced by smoking, tattoos, and skirts shortened to thigh-high length, a full-fledged delinquent girl. Meanwhile, Lu Xingchen and I were achieving better academic results, ranking first and second in our grade, the pride of teachers and classmates alike. Every year I would host a birthday banquet, inviting all my classmates to strengthen our bonds, while also providing a good opportunity for our parents' generation to network and explore collaborations. Many students at school considered it an honor to attend my birthday banquet. This was my coming-of-age ceremony, exceptionally grand, with several industry leaders in attendance. I prepared a grand gift for my parents. Mom, Dad, I've been searching for you so desperately. Just as my parents and the VIPs were toasting, the door suddenly burst open, and a heart-wrenching, sorrowful male voice cried out, "I've finally come home." After saying that, he sat on the ground and burst into tears. Bald, dressed in rags, with a fierce scar on his face, he didn't look like a good person, especially with the foul stench emanating from him. Everyone silently took a few steps back, and the melodious piano music came to a stop. Mom asked in confusion, "Who are you?" The older brother immediately looked up excitedly, with tears and snot running down his face, looking both pitiful and disgusting. "Mom, Dad, I'm Lu Qingjing, your son, don't you remember me?" As he spoke, he tried to hug Mom, who instinctively took a few steps back because of the terrible smell, quickly covering her nose. I said with disgust, "Why do you smell so bad? Do you have some kind of contagious disease?" I threw back every word Gu Jiejie had said to him, without missing a single one. My brother's eyes turned bloodshot when he saw me stepping forward to hit me. "Lu Yining, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't have ended up like this." Lu Xingchen immediately shielded me, his expression icy as he said, "Don't bully my sister." I peeked out and said innocently, "Brother, stay away from him. He looks like an ex-convict. Did he just get out of prison?" Everyone silently took a few steps back. The older brother completely lost his temper, started overturning tables, and roared in anger, "How long have I been gone? You've already found someone to replace me. You're too much. I hate you." The security guards arrived in time and restrained the older brother, but this banquet was also forcibly interrupted. When they left, everyone had different expressions on their faces. What happened tonight would spread throughout the circle by tomorrow morning. The business deal that Mom, Dad, and the big shot were discussing also came to nothing in the end. Dad was so angry that he started throwing a tantrum as soon as they left. Couldn't he have come back at any other time? He had to show up now and completely humiliate us. Mom rubbed her temples, seemingly suffering from a headache caused by the earlier commotion. This child really came back at the wrong time. 9. The older brother, who had just finished showering and came downstairs, turned red with anger upon hearing this. "I'm your own flesh and blood. You don't care at all about how I made it back, how I've been all these years. I dreamed of our family reunion every night. How could you treat me like this?" A 6-foot-tall man sat on the floor wailing. Just how much grievance must he have endured? Unfortunately, because he had just embarrassed his parents so much, they not only didn't feel sorry for him, but also thought he was disgraceful and shameful. Dad waved his hand. "Enough. What kind of man cries at the drop of a hat? Since you're home, just stay put and don't go out making trouble." The older brother wiped his tears and snot with his sleeve, still sniffling, as he pointed at Lu Xingchen viciously. "Kick him out. Now that I'm back, keeping this replacement here just makes me sick." Before I could even speak, my parents said in unison, "No." My brother was so angry that his hands clenched tightly into fists, veins bulging on his forehead. "Mom, Dad, I'm your real son," my mother soothed. "We know. But Xingchen has gotten along very well with us all these years, and everyone likes him." Dad also added, "You should learn more from him." Hearing this, the older brother completely lost his temper and swung a fist intending to hit Lu Xingchen, who lightly sidestepped and perfectly dodged it. Extending his foot, he tripped the brother, but with the sofa blocking the view. Their parents didn't clearly see this small move and only thought the brother had lost his balance. The brother fell so hard that his nose started bleeding, but instead of receiving any comfort, he was met with scolding. Dad cursed, "You disgraceful thing, if you keep making trouble I'll throw you out." The older brother trembled with rage, but didn't dare to make a scene. because he realized this was no longer the home he remembered, and his parents no longer loved him. When resting at night, the older brother stared at Lu Xingchen's spacious room with venom in his eyes and said, "From now on, I'll sleep here, you go sleep in the guest room." With our parents absent, I dropped the act and sneered, "Brother, it seems you still haven't figured out your place in this family. During the time you were kidnapped, Brother Xingchen has long since taken your place, not just in our parents' affection, but also your inheritance rights. Brother Xingchen is handsome and outstanding. Not only does he excel academically, but he's also incredibly popular. The young ladies and gentlemen in our social circle all seek him out willingly. Do you really think your bloodline alone can compare to the benefits he's brought to the company? You'd better show some respect to Brother Xingchen from now on. Otherwise, once our parents grow old, you'll be thrown out and forced to return to that life of wandering and begging." Lu Xingchen stood quietly behind me, silent yet exuding an overwhelming aura of intimidation. Big Brother was furious. Erupting into helpless rage, he nearly threw something but restrained himself, terrified that Dad might hear and actually kick him out, grinding his molars to dust. "Fine, just you two wait and see." 10. After escorting me back to my room, Lu Xingchen asked, "Do you really despise your brother?" I nodded, "Yes. I want to kill him." Lu Xingchen looked at me with a complicated expression, but didn't try to console me. I licked my lips. "Xingchen, don't you think Gu Jiejie and my brother are a match made in heaven?" After some thought, Lu Xingchen nodded, "A perfect match." I curled my lips. As expected of the brother I chose, he never questions any of my decisions. The weather turned cold, and the days of the Qin group's desperate struggle finally came to an end, with bankruptcy declared. Naturally, there was no more money to play around with Gu Jiejie. When Qin Yi was around, Gu Jiejie was particularly arrogant, bullying many classmates. Now that she's lost her protector, everyone has started bullying her again. I arranged for people to corner her in an alley and beat her up. Then I played the hero and came to her rescue. Then it was only natural to invite her over to my place. Gu Jiejie, desperately needing a lifeline at this moment, naturally wouldn't refuse me, even going out of her way to flatter me in her words. I smiled gently. "Let bygones be bygones. Let's be good friends from now on." Gu Jiejie nodded eagerly, afraid I might change my mind. I brought her a short skirt and told her to go take a shower in my brother's room. Since my brother had just moved in, his room was still empty and no different from a guest room. Coincidentally, my brother, who had gotten tired from playing games in the garden, had just returned to his room. 5 minutes passed, and it was still quiet inside. I spread my hands. "Xingchen, you lost." Lu Xingchen placed this month's allowance in my hand. "You understand human nature better than I do." I smiled faintly. "When it comes to human nature, you understand it better. But when it comes to the temperament of beasts, I understand it better than you." 11. That evening, Gu Jiejie stayed for dinner, reverting to her original White Lotus persona, docile and gentle. To top it off, I helped gild her image. Although Jiejie doesn't come from a privileged background, she studies exceptionally hard and refuses to yield to fate. She has a wonderful personality, and we all love spending time with her. Many guys are pursuing her too, but she has high standards and usually doesn't fancy ordinary guys. At this moment, Lu Xingchen also proactively picked up a spare rib for her. He said gently, "You can't eat spicy food." "This one isn't spicy." Gu Jiejie was flattered. Her brother's eyes filled with determination, while I pursed my lips and struggled to suppress the smile at the corners of my mouth. Soon, her brother started dating Gu Jiejie. Initially, their parents had some reservations, feeling that Gu Jiejie's family background was too humble to match their son, but her brother insisted, believing that true love was what mattered most. As he said this, he provocatively glanced at Lu Xingchen, who lowered his head with a sorrowful expression. Thus, the elder brother became even more resolute, unwavering until death. In the end, Mom and Dad finally nodded in agreement. Gu Jiejie, who had undergone 6 abortions, had a highly fertile constitution and soon became pregnant again. Dad was especially delighted. "Great, truly my son, the Lu family lineage will continue. If it's a boy, I'll reward Gu Jiejie with 1 million yuan. Gu Jiejie's eyes instantly lit up. "Thank you, uncle." Mother looked tenderly at her belly. Her eyes also filled with joy. I seized the opportunity to say, "Since Jiejie is also pregnant, how about holding a grand wedding? It would also be a good chance to introduce Big Brother to everyone." Naturally, they happily agreed and immediately scheduled the wedding for the end of the month. While passing by the study at night, I overheard my parents whispering, "Qingjing has been wasting his years outside and can't inherit the family business. Although Yining is outstanding, she's still a girl after all, and the company can't be handed over to her. if this child is a boy, he'll inherit the company in the future. If it's not a boy, we'll keep having children until we get one. Although the company has reached its current scale thanks to Ening, it's just her fate not being born a boy. I curled my lips. Just like in my past life, they still favor sons over daughters. Then I'll send them another grand gift. 12. Although the wedding between brother and Gu Jiejie was somewhat rushed, every item used was exquisitely luxurious. I marveled. Xingchen, this wedding is truly beautiful. Lu Xingchen glanced at the USB drive I was fiddling with and chuckled. And yet you're still planning to destroy it. Facing my provocatively toasting elder brother, I also raised my drink and clinked it with his from a distance, taking a small sip. Smiling meaningfully, I said, otherwise they won't learn their lesson. The wedding march slowly began to play as my brother and Gu Jiejie walked hand in hand, making a barely passable handsome couple. Both my father and mother took turns giving speeches on stage, reading from heartfelt scripts that brought tears to their eyes. Lu Xingchen peeled a white rabbit milk candy for me. I chuckled softly. What's this for? I'm not a kid anymore. He pushed the candy to my lips. Sweet. I mischievously licked it with my tongue and blinked. It really is sweet. He reached out and pinched my cheek, then shoved it straight in, rubbing my still aching cheek. I turned and headed backstage. A wolf pup will always be a wolf pup. It can never become a lapdog. After entering backstage, I spoke directly. You go attend the banquet. I'll handle the rest, the staff member cheerfully said. All right. Just as the brother and Gu Jiejie exchanged rings and leaned in for a kiss. The loving video on the electronic screen behind them switched to footage of Gu Jiejie and Qinyi. The audience instantly erupted in gasps of shock. The brother and Gu Jiejie, thinking everyone was cheering them on, became even more enthusiastic. Everyone shouted loudly, look behind, look behind. The two who had just kissed turned around with smiles, thinking it was a surprise prepared by their parents. Just a second ago, Gu Jiejie thought she was at the peak of her life. But the next moment she felt a chill run through her body, as if falling into an ice cave. The smile on her brother's face instantly froze, and he snarled, good, so you've been lying to me all along. Gu Jiejie's face turned deathly pale as she trembled and said, let me explain. Her brother punched Gu Jiejie hard in the face, then kicked her stomach. Tell me now, whose bastard is in your belly? Gu Jiejie's snow-white dress was instantly stained red with blood, writhing in pain. She couldn't even make a sound, but her brother, blinded by rage, continued beating and kicking her mercilessly. Someone in the audience wanted to go up and break up the fight, but the brother was acting like a madman at that moment. When our parents came out of the restroom and saw this scene, they hurried onto the stage to intervene, but were instead pushed away by the brother. Mom hit her head against a pillar, blood gushed out immediately, and she fainted from shock. Dad was also punched by the brother, knocking out his front teeth. Even 4 security guards couldn't restrain the frenzied brother. It wasn't until the police arrived that he was finally subdued. The brother was taken to the police station, while Mom, Dad, and Gu Jiejie went to the hospital. 13. Gu Jiejie's child miscarried. Her spine was fractured, 8 ribs were broken. And she was in resuscitation for 7 hours. Although she survived, she will need to lie in bed for the rest of her life. For easier bowel movements, she cannot wear pants, living without any dignity. The mother had a mild concussion, but it's not a serious issue. The father had 2 porcelain fused to metal dental crowns implanted. I sat on the flower bed, swinging my legs, staring at them with wide, unblinking eyes. Now, I thought my parents would hire the best lawyer to reduce my brother's prison sentence by a couple of years, but they acted as if they never had this son. Oh, so they only feel the pain when they're the ones getting hurt. After the college entrance exams, I became the top science student, while Lu Xingchen scored 1 point less than me. I grinned widely, flashing my white teeth, and surprisingly he didn't seem annoyed at all. How embarrassingly my parents behaved at my brother's wedding last time is exactly how joyfully they're smiling at my college celebration now. They've finally realized I'm their only true pride. After graduation, I inherited my parents' company. Initially, I planned to scrap it and sell it as waste, destroying their life's work. But there was just too much money involved. I couldn't bring myself to do it. Being the CEO is actually quite comfortable. Lu Xingchen became a professor because during a truth or dare game at a class reunion after the college entrance exams, they asked me what type of person I liked. I couldn't keep my mouth shut and said, I like the refined but wicked type, like a professor. The classmates erupted in screams. From then on, Lu Xingchen started wearing gold-rimmed glasses, with white shirts as his signature look. Baffling. 14. Gu Jiejie went insane. I arranged it, then had her committed to a mental institution. My brother had a terrible time in prison. I hired several thugs to take turns serving him daily. He eventually swallowed a toothbrush and killed himself. They say he died in agony, muttering my name and some strange words about rebirth. I've been thinking about how to arrange things so my parents wouldn't get their hands dirty, yet still make them suffer. But in the end, they beat me to it. They got hit by a truck while driving out, both seriously injured. I comforted the truck driver. I know you didn't mean to. Life's hard for you too. You don't have insurance for the truck, right? Forget it then. No need for compensation. I'll even fix your truck for you. Everyone calls me the most conscientious businessman. I turned to the doctor and said, donate all the usable tracheas for my parents, and donate their bodies too. The doctor, who initially thought resuscitation was possible, swallowed their words at the last moment. Okay, thank you, really thank you so much. On behalf of the patients who will receive help, I express my sincere gratitude. I smiled as I accepted all the praise and honors. It was what I deserved. Stepping out of the hospital, I saw Lu Xingchen waving at me from his newly bought sports car. The weather is really nice today. Story 2, Shenke missed Gu Huan for half of his life, while I clung to half of his wealth and pestered him for half of my life. It wasn't until I was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 50 that I realized that all the things in the past were just like a dream that came to nothing. If I could live my life again, I only wish that we could part ways amicably and each find our own happiness. 1. On the day I received the cancer diagnosis report, I somehow burst into laughter. When I was young, I was unwilling to let go, unwilling to be a witness to the love between the two of them, so I pestered them for half of my life. I got myself so angry that I fell ill. Now, looking back, all those things in the past were just like a dream that came to nothing. In the face of life and death, all love and hate are just trifles. On my 50th birthday, I made a wish. If I could go back to my 20s, I don't want to be with Shenku anymore. I buried this wish in my heart, and when I opened my eyes, I smiled and took the flowers that Shenku handed me. No one didn't envy the love between Shenku and me. We went from wearing school uniforms to wedding dresses, supported each other through thick and thin, started from scratch, and jointly created the brand Jingning. I've been acting for half of my life, and in the end, I almost believed that we really liked each other. Only by deceiving myself could I somehow make it through the days. I'm stubborn. I'd rather have a bad life myself than fulfill their love, so we could only keep acting. And it went on for half of our lives. It was just that day when Gu Huan went abroad to settle down, Shenke and I went to see her off together. Shenke stood on the platform of the plane, watching her back gradually disappear at the end. He stood there motionlessly, not knowing what he was thinking, and didn't come back to his senses for a long time. And I also stared at Shenke, watching him send off the person he loved the most with sadness in his eyes. The two people in love were now separated by the Pacific Ocean. It was like a real-life tragic love story, and I was the culprit. I thought of the words Shenke said, if that person isn't Gu Huan, then for me, it's all the same who I marry, so it's better to marry someone she likes. At least she'll be happy that way. These words kept echoing in my mind, and I suddenly felt like vomiting. I really rushed to the bathroom and vomited violently. It turned out that shit wrapped in sugar coating was still shit. I had deceived myself for a lifetime that it was sugar, but it was still shit. I suddenly felt that my past 30 years had been an absolute mess, a complete joke. A minute before blowing out the candles, I saw a post hashtag if you could go back in time, which year would you like to go back to? Hashtag. I thought that if I were to answer, I would go back to 1980, the day when Gu Huan encouraged me to confess my love to Shenku. On that day, Shenku agreed to my confession. I was too shy to look into his eyes. It was only many years later, when I saw the photo of that day, that I realized, in the photo, his eyes never landed on me from beginning to end. Instead, he looked at Gu Huan, who was laughing and cheering beside him, with sadness. If I'm destined not to marry you, then I'll marry someone you like. What a great love. After the birthday celebration, Shenku drove me home. I sat in the passenger seat without saying a word. This was the normal state between Shenku and me. We had zero communication and interaction in private. And we only talked when there were other people around. This was a Cold War that I unilaterally initiated and had lasted for 30 years. Shenku didn't ask why and just naturally accepted it all. I was curled up in my seat, scrolling through that post, when suddenly a strong light shone over. When the truck rushed towards us, Shenku instinctively turned the steering wheel and used his side to meet it, even though he didn't love me. I couldn't help but admit that Shenku was a fairly qualified husband, and precisely because of this, I couldn't even hate him completely. So, a little bit of love, a little bit of hate, and a little bit of resentment merged into a thick, sticky mess that couldn't be stirred. making people feel sick. I just stared at Shinku expressionlessly until my consciousness fell into darkness. 2. When I woke up again, I had traveled back in time, but it wasn't back to my 20s, it was back to my 30s. Sometimes, fate is like this, it won't let you get what you want so easily, yet it won't completely block your path either. That year, I had just become pregnant with my daughter. That year, Gu Huan had just gotten divorced. That year, I finally woke up from the beautiful dream that Shinku loved me. On September 18th, Shinku's birthday, I originally wanted to tell him the good news of my pregnancy as his birthday gift. When I arrived at the company excitedly, I heard the words that would torture me countless times in the future. Fate was so unpredictable, and I was back at this moment again. This time, I seemed so calm. However, when I heard those words, my heart still ached dully. If that person isn't Gu Huan, then for me, it's all the same who I marry, so it's better to marry someone she likes. At least she'll be happy that way. This time, I didn't turn around and run away, so I heard Shinku's next words. Yuntang has suffered a lot by following me. I won't do anything. I still remembered that day. I left the company alone and wandered outside for a long time. I didn't go home until it was dark. People of my mother's generation always said that turning a blind eye and pretending not to see would make it through a lifetime. How many men in this world have one family at home and another outside, yet they still live well? I was raised by my mother, and her influence was inevitably imprinted in my thoughts. At that time, all I could think about was giving the child in my belly a complete family. It took me an afternoon to convince myself. My father passed away early, and my mother raised me alone. Life was not easy for us, an orphan and a widow. Because I didn't have a father, I suffered a lot of grievances, so I didn't want my child to suffer the same way. Shinku was a person with a high sense of morality. He wouldn't do anything substantial. As long as I could endure countless disgusting moments, as long as I pretended not to know anything, we would still be a good couple and good parents. In this way, at least my child could have a complete family, both sets of parents could be at ease, and the company wouldn't be in turmoil. At that time, I considered everyone, but I didn't consider myself. I thought I was great and had once been immersed in this sense of sacrifice, until one day, my daughter Shenning said to me, "Mom, you don't have to smile when you don't want to. I've always wanted you to be happy, but I don't know how to make you happy. Even if my schoolwork is always the first in the class, you'll only be happy for a while and then quickly become depressed again." It turned out that those who love you can tell that you're not happy. In these years when I forced myself to be happy, my daughter Shenning had also been bearing the same pressure as me. I thought I was doing the best for my daughter, but I never asked her if she wanted it. It was only many years later that I realized that only when you truly love yourself can you have the ability to love others. An unhappy mother can't raise a happy daughter. This might be the reason why Shenning has been working non-stop and always been so anxious all these years. 3. I touched my belly that hadn't shown the pregnancy yet and said softly, "This lifetime, I will be a happy mother and raise you to be the happiest baby in the world." In my previous life, after I convinced myself, I told Shinku about my pregnancy, and this matter completely put an end to Shinku's thoughts. But this time, I didn't want to do that. My child shouldn't be a tool. When I went to the hotel, Shinku's birthday party had already started. It was his 30th birthday, and it happened to be during the booming development stage of the company. So the party was held very grandly. Gu Huan was also there. After the divorce, she had lost a lot of weight and didn't smile as much. Her thin body swayed in the Chinese-style cheongsam. She stood beside Shinku, and the two of them stood side by side at the center of the crowd, looking very well matched. When she saw me coming, Gu Huan seemed a bit at a loss and wanted to give her position to me. Shinku instinctively grabbed her sleeve and explained dryly, "Gu Huan is wearing thin clothes, and the air conditioner can't reach here." She had always been the center of attention. As long as the focus was not on her for a moment, it seemed to make people feel sorry for her. I smiled and walked forward, standing on the other side of Shinku. "It's okay, you can just stand here. We haven't seen each other for a long time, and it's convenient for us to talk." When the cake was pushed in, the waiter naturally handed the cake to Gu Huan, and she naturally took it. Compared to me, Gu Huan seemed more like the hostess of this party. When Gu Huan smiled, her eyes were as sweet as crescent moons. While singing the birthday song, she walked towards Shinku step by step. "Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to School Hunk Shen." Boss Shen, who was very competent and capable in the business world, rarely showed a bit of the awkwardness of a young lad. "What school hunk? I'm already old." Gu Huan dipped a little cream and smeared it on the tip of Shinku's nose, with a bit of playfulness in her smile. "You'll always be young in my eyes." I had never seen Shinku so happy before. There was a smile between his eyebrows and eyes. At the age of 30, in the prime of his life, his business was booming, and the girl he liked the most during his adolescence was by his side. This was Shinka's golden age. The moment the crystal lamp went out, the candle flames flickered on the cake. Shinka closed his eyes and lowered his head to make a wish. Was he wishing for such a day every year, or for lovers to finally get married? Anyway, I wasn't in his wish. My heart ached. It was as if Shi Yuntang at the age of 30 and my body was feeling sad. It took me a long time to recover. In fact, it was countless such moments that gradually dragged people down. I once thought I could endure it, but later I realized that I had overestimated myself. 4. When the party ended, Shinku was a bit drunk and almost fell when going downstairs. Gu Huan hurriedly went to help him, but he instinctively pushed her away and put his arm around my shoulder. In these years, since we started from scratch, we had seen too many dirty tricks at drinking parties. As a result, Shinku became more alert when he was drunk and would only feel at ease when he saw me. I saw Gu Huan's slightly disappointed look and comforted her. He's drunk. I'm afraid he didn't see clearly who you are. When I finally let go of my obsession with Shinku, I became more open-minded. It could be regarded as a repayment for Shinku finally blocking the car for me in my previous life. One was disgusted for a lifetime, and the other couldn't get the love they wanted for a lifetime. It's hard to say who was more pitiful between me and Shinku. Shi Yuntang, are you really willing? Gu Huan stood in the shadow, and I couldn't see her expression clearly. Soon, she smiled and waved at me, as if the words just now were just a dream. I'll go first, see you next time. This was the first time she clearly told me her intention. In my previous life, she hated me many times, but I had blocked her attempts without showing it. Regarding Gu Huan, I never knew what attitude to take towards her. When we were in college, my family was very poor. Gu Huan had a good family background, good looks, and a good personality. She was like a little sun shining on everyone included Shinku and me. In the coldest winters, I got through them by picking up her clothes, although she didn't really look up to me. For example, the shoes my mother made with her own hands, she smiled and accepted them on the surface, but they soon appeared in the trash can. However, when judging someone, we should look at their actions rather than their thoughts. People's hearts can't stand scrutiny during those warm winters. I finally owed her a favor and remembered her kindness, so later, after she got divorced and Shinku took extra care of her, I had no reason to say anything, so I was disgusted for a lifetime and trapped myself for a lifetime. Since I had already decided on this path, I had to swallow the sand and blood. Only now did I realize that sunk costs shouldn't be included in the decision-making. 5. The autumn wind blew again at night. Shinku rubbed his fluffy hair against my chest. I carried Shinku to the car with some difficulty. Every time he drank, he would be particularly dependent on me. In these years, since the business had just started, there were always many drinking parties. Some honey water for sobering up was always prepared in the car. After drinking a cup of honey water, Shinku seemed a bit more sober, but not completely. He looked at me with a slightly aggrieved expression, curled up in the passenger seat like a stray puppy. Where's my birthday gift? On every birthday of Shinku's, I would prepare a gift for him, including those in the past that I hadn't participated in. He, like me, came from a poor family. When survival was the top priority, gifts became a luxury. Sometimes I wondered if girls were born knowing how to love. Just like when I was a child, no one ever gave me a birthday gift, but I still wanted to make up all the gifts for Shinku, from the first year to the 30th year. I thought of the pregnancy test sheet lying quietly in my bag. This was originally the gift I prepared for him on his 30th birthday. Shinku frowned, thinking that I was angry because of what happened today. Gu Huan just got divorced and is feeling depressed. Today on my birthday, I just wanted to make her happy. Sorry, Yuntang, I didn't consider your feelings. I looked up at him, and he looked at me with full sincerity. Shinku was always like this. He could keenly sense the things that made me unhappy, apologize neatly, but still do the same thing next time. He spared no effort to help her with the divorce lawsuit, rented a house for her, found her a job, and when she was depressed, he raised a little dog with her. I still remembered that the dog's name seemed to be Zuitsui, and its nickname was Ai, which meant recalling the past. In order not to make me suspicious, he would ask me to go with him for all these things. So I was troubled whether I went or not. Because of these things, Shinku and I had many arguments. Later, we finally stopped arguing and also stopped talking. After giving birth to Anning, we started sleeping in separate rooms, and the Cold War lasted for nearly 20 years. Shinku still looked at me persistently, with his palms facing upwards, as if he wouldn't give up until he got the gift today. When he was drunk, He was like an unreasonable child. I slapped his hand away and, under his aggrieved expression, smiled and said, "Your gift hasn't arrived yet. Wait a few more days, and I'll give it to you." I once thought that people who understood each other were very suitable to be together, and Shenke and I were the same kind of people. We were from the same hometown and had both been admitted out of that poor small mountain village. We had the same poor family background, the same awkwardness, the same inferiority complex, and the same self-esteem most of the time. With just a glance, we could understand what each other was thinking. Later, I realized that people like us needed someone like a little sun to dispel all the dark corners in our hearts. Gu Huan was that little sun. A divorce agreement should be the best gift for Shenku. 6. Everything developed just like in my previous life. Gu Huan's divorce process wasn't smooth. Her ex-husband became an alcoholic after going bankrupt and would look for Gu Huan from time to time when he was drunk. So Shenku would always receive Gu Huan's calls at various times, including but not limited to, when sleeping, when eating, when having a meeting. Today, when the meeting was halfway through, Shenku's big mobile phone rang again. I didn't know how many times this had happened these days. This time, the supplier was a big order that we had always wanted to secure. It took a lot of effort to have this meeting. The meeting was interrupted by the successive phone calls, and Manager Chen showed an unhappy expression. "If your company doesn't have the sincerity, we don't need to discuss this order anymore." I quickly smiled and tried to soothe the supplier's emotions. The Longjing tea picked before the rain, the first batch of new shoots. Knowing that Manager Chen loves tea, I specially prepared it. "We're just thirsty from the discussion. Why don't we take a break?" Shenke looked absent-minded. He looked at me, hesitated for a long time, and then said, "Gu Huan was almost hit by a car just now and sprained her ankle. She's all alone in the hospital." I suddenly found it a bit ridiculous. Without family, relatives, or friends, she still called an old classmate of many years. Sure enough, people in love were like fools, and even a smart person like Shenku was no exception. I curled the corner of my lips and adjusted his tie for him. "It's okay, I'm here, you can go." He didn't care about making money, but I did. After all, I wanted my daughter to be a rich second generation. In the end, I successfully secured the business. By the way, I asked someone to estimate the company's cash flow and the assets under mine and Shenke's names. I also consulted a lawyer to find out how much I could get if we got a divorce. In fact, I have more talent for doing business than Shenke. I have a sharper vision, can see things more accurately, and am more ambitious. In my previous life, there were many opportunities for the company to double its assets, but they were all missed because he preferred to stay in his comfort zone. However, later I retreated to the rear. I gave birth to an and Shenke's mother fell seriously ill. Someone was needed at home. There needed to be someone to do the logistical work, and so, naturally, that person was me. The man takes care of external affairs, and the woman takes care of internal affairs. Everyone said so and did so at that time, and I didn't realize there was anything wrong with it. I didn't have much interest in the company. It was an antique that would eventually be eliminated by the times. In my previous life, I always wanted to carry out the company's reform, but I was restricted by various reasons. Now that I have a chance to live my life again, I have the ability and confidence to take my company to the next level. 7. After coming out of the hospital, Shenke said he wanted to arrange a job for Gu Huan and asked me if there were any suitable positions. I thought for a while and said, "Aren't you in urgent need of a secretary? I think Gu Huan is quite suitable." Shenke looked at me in surprise and asked hesitantly, "Is this appropriate?" I comforted him. "What's inappropriate about it? We're all old classmates and our own people. You can rest assured when using her." Shenke suddenly frowned and looked at me for a long time, then said, "Yuntang, you seem to have changed." I smiled and replied, "Everyone changes." So Gu Huan officially joined the company. Every day, she dressed beautifully and followed Shenke, mainly responsible for some reception work. Many times, she was mistaken for the boss's wife by customers. She smiled shyly, and Shenke didn't explain. People in the company were spreading the word that Gu Huan would be the next boss's wife and subtly warned me to be careful. I just smiled and didn't care. After all, I didn't care about the title of boss's wife. What I wanted to be was the boss. Until the last moment of my previous life, Shenke didn't have any substantial actions. I even thought that if something really happened between them, it might be more beneficial for me in terms of property division in the divorce. When I no longer dwell on love, affection, and responsibility, my world suddenly became much clearer. Sometimes I even deliberately created an environment for them, hoping that they wouldn't let down my good intentions. 8. Shenku was busy helping Gu Huan with a divorce lawsuit, and I was even busier than him. In my previous life, a college student came to the company to seek investment. I saw his potential at a glance, but since I couldn't make the decision, it eventually came to nothing. Later, it turned out that I was right. He held his patent and became a well-known tech tycoon later. In this life, I was afraid that there would be any variables, so I took the initiative first. I walked around near the university town for several days in a row, and finally, I found Jiangqing. The person who would later be on the list of the wealthy was still just a poor student who couldn't even get enough to eat. I sat in front of him and said straightforwardly, "I hope to invest in your patent. You will have full decision-making power in the company, and I will provide you with all the necessary resources and talents." Jiangqing looked up at me in a daze, swallowed the steamed bun in his mouth, and burped. I looked at him eagerly, waiting for his next words. After a while, he said quietly, "Do I look easy to deceive?" I was taken aback for a moment and then smiled. "I can take you to my company to have a look." Jiangqing was very defensive. I accompanied him to visit the company and the science and technology park for an afternoon, and then he finally believed me. Securing Jiangqing's patent laid a solid foundation for my business blueprint. When I got home, it was already very late. It seemed that Shenku was waiting for me. He had fallen asleep on the sofa and only got up when he heard the commotion. "Why did you come back so late?" I casually found an excuse to perfunctorily answer him. Shenku followed me attentively. "Gu Huan has had too many things going on recently. Thank you for your hard work with the company's affairs these days." It was nothing more than an apology for ignoring me these days and a thank you for my hard work. There are some men in this world like this. They understand everything but don't change anything. His warm breath coiled around my neck, and his voice was hoarse. I held down his restless hand and said coldly, "I'm very tired." He turned over, and there was a hint of irritability in his tone. "Gu Huan just got divorced. She helped us a lot in the past. Now that we're doing well, it's normal to give her a hand. Without her, we might not have made it. Yuntang, we can't be ungrateful. In my previous life, I was trapped by the word kindness and endured everything, suffering losses everywhere. I was too lazy to talk nonsense with him. Many words can hurt you only if you care about the person who said them. But I no longer cared about Shenku. His words were just like the buzzing of flies in my ears. 9. My belly was getting bigger day by day, and my secretary, Xiao Lu, even asked me if I had gained some weight these days. I must get divorced before it's discovered and complete the independence of my personal company. If possible, I must obtain clear evidence of Shenku's infidelity. So the school anniversary became the best opportunity, remembering the past, reflecting on the hardships, and then getting drunk and losing one's senses. It would all happen naturally. I specially prepared a white shirt for Shenku. Although he was already 30 years old, he looked a bit like a college student when wearing it. In college, this was the set of clothes he wore most often. He would hold a book and read in the pavilion, and there was still a steamed bun in his hand. He was good-looking, even though the shirt had been washed until it turned yellow. He still had a clean and good-looking appearance. Before he left, I carefully ironed his clothes and then helped him put them on. Shenku looked at me quietly with his head lowered. "Are you really not going? There's something to deal with at the company. If you don't go, aren't you angry when others make jokes about me and Gu Huan? I trust you." He looked at me for a long time and suddenly became a bit angry, saying angrily, "I don't know what you've been busy with recently. Whatever, I'm leaving." I didn't know why he was angry. After Shenku left, I found Jiangqing. Jiangqing was an alumnus of my university. After getting along with him these days, I found that he was a pretty good candidate. When Jiangqing heard what I said, his eyes were shining, and he strongly recommended his roommates to me. He promised repeatedly that he would never miss any clue. The word "watching the excitement" seemed to be engraved in the DNA of Chinese people, especially when it came to catching someone in the act of infidelity. At this time, videos couldn't be sent, so they relayed the scene to me using a beeper throughout the process. Jiangqing had a good writing style and was humorous. I was even amused by what he said. "Some things, when you don't consider yourself an insider, you'll find that they are absurd and ridiculous." When we were at school, everyone thought that Gu Huan liked Shenku. She always liked to put the drumstick from her bowl into Shenku's rice bowl and always liked to follow Shenku. She also gave Shenku clothes many times, but Shenku didn't accept them, so she asked other boys to give these clothes to Shenku, pretending that they were clothes the boys didn't want anymore. That's what she said, but who would really be willing to give up such new brand name clothes? It was more of a tacit understanding between the two parties. At that time, I really thought they would get together, and I was also very sensible and hid my feelings well, until the day she introduced me to Shenke and then pushed me to confess my love to Shenke. Everything happened so unexpectedly. The person I liked when I was young was standing in front of me, so I lost my mind and wasted my whole life. It's just that there's probably always the principle of first come, first served in relationships. Gu Huan came earlier than me, so no matter how much I did later, I was always one step behind. 10. The situation between the two of them on the beeper was still developing. They had drunk a lot of wine. I specifically instructed Jiangqing to book a hotel for them so that things could develop naturally later. That night, I sat on the sofa alone for a long time. I had sat on this sofa many times waiting for Shenke to come home. I was very afraid that something would really happen between them and that one day Shenke would no longer come back to this home, so I waited on the sofa night after night until he came home. But I never thought that one day I would be waiting on this sofa for evidence of their infidelity. However, instead of waiting for the evidence of infidelity, the door was knocked on. Jiangqing supported the drunk Shenke with a look of despair. There were vomit stains all over Shenke's clothes. "He's drunk and keeps calling your name," I hurriedly asked the aunt to support Shenke. Jiangqing looked at his clothes with pity. "This is my only suit. I promised repeatedly that I would definitely reimburse him," and then he left, looking unhappy. After the aunt took off Shenke's dirty clothes, she placed him on the sofa. I stood by the sofa and looked at him for a long time. I didn't know how I felt at that moment. On the one hand, I was worried that the subsequent divorce would be a bit troublesome, and on the other hand, I was glad that Shenke was at least not a person without any bottom line. I sighed. When I was about to leave, someone grabbed the hem of my clothes. I turned around and saw that Shenke's eyes were red, and he asked me aggrievedly, "Yuntang, why don't you care about me anymore?" I tried to pull the hem of my clothes away, but he held it tightly, as if he had to get an answer. Finally, I squatted down and looked at him quietly, and he looked at me too. "But isn't this what you want, Shenke? Tell me what exactly you want." Shenke didn't answer. He once asked me the same question, and I didn't answer either. When I was a child, I hoped that my mother would love me more than my younger brother. Later, I hoped that Shenke would love me, and later, my daughter Anning told me that I should love myself. Now, I will get everything I want and no longer need others to bestow it on me. 11. I hurried to let Jiangqing choose a location, and the new production line began to be slowly laid out. He was as ambitious as I was. In short, our technology couldn't be restricted by other countries. However, I still didn't have a suitable plan on how to maximize my benefits in the divorce. Just then, Gu Huan came along. I originally planned to support Gu Huan, just like keeping an idle person who was of no use. But she didn't seem to be willing to be a canary and was determined to make a name for herself in the business world. She wasn't smart, and Shenke's mind also seemed to be out of order. He handed the contract to her. The whole team worked day and night for a week, but all their efforts were in vain because of her mistake. I finally couldn't hold back my anger and shouted angrily, "How many times have I told you to check the contract several times before sending it out?" Gu Huan looked at me with red eyes and said aggrievedly, "I didn't do it on purpose." I tried to hold back my anger but still couldn't help it. I threw the contract in my hand at Gu Huan's face. "Just because you didn't do it on purpose, can you escape your responsibility?" The A4 papers fell like snowflakes in the air, but Gu Huan suddenly looked at me and smiled, then fell backward. I had watched so many palace intrigue dramas in my previous life, and this trick was so cliched that I was stunned for a moment. Next, the brainless male protagonist should appear and ask me why I did that. A plan suddenly took shape in my mind at this moment. Sure enough, Shenke helped Gu Huan up and looked at me angrily. "It's just a business. If this one fails, there will always be the next one. Do you have to be so aggressive?" I walked forward and, in Gu Huan's extremely shocked expression, slapped Shenke neatly. "Are you sober now?" I was about to slap Gu Huan again. As expected, Shenke pushed me to protect Gu Huan. This was exactly the push I was waiting for. I took advantage of the force and directly bumped into the table. With a pale face, I called for someone to call an ambulance. Shenke hurriedly came to help me. With tears in my eyes, I grabbed his hand. "The baby." Shenke suddenly seemed at a loss, panicked, and was about to pick me up and run downstairs. 12. We had been looking forward to this child for a long time. When we were young, we were busy with our careers and ran around day and night. For the first child we conceived, before we even knew it had arrived, it was already gone. When we wanted to have a child, the child just wouldn't come for a long time. Over the years, every time I went to a temple, I would light a long burning lamp for that lost child, hoping that one day he would come back. So there was no better way than losing a child to gain a person's guilt. And guilt was an emotion that could be used to great effect. The hospital was a private hospital I had contacted a long time ago. As soon as I arrived at the hospital, I was immediately pushed into the operating room. The moment I was pushed into the operating room, Shinku knelt on the ground due to exhaustion. When I came out, he was still slumped on the ground. The doctor lowered his head and said to him apologetically, "I'm sorry, the child couldn't be saved." Shinku was stunned on the spot. His face as pale as a ghost. For the rest of the time, all I needed to do was close my eyes, turn my back, and pretend to be in a state of despair. During the few days I stayed in the hospital, Shinku stayed by my side every step of the way. Many nights, I heard the sound of him tossing and turning. On the day of my discharge, I looked at him. "Let's talk." He hurriedly went to pack things, avoiding the topic. "There are so many things and they haven't been packed yet. The doctor will come to check us out soon. Just lie here. Shelly will come to pick you up later. The wind outside is strong, you can't catch a cold." He kept packing things on his own, and I just watched him quietly. Finally, when all the things were finally packed and he finally had no reason to delay, "Can we talk properly now?" He remained silent. I sent him the document drafted by the lawyer. "If there's no problem, sign it." Shinku's lips moved, but in the end, he said nothing. Some things reach a certain point where both parties know there's no room for redemption. He signed his name without even looking at the contract. I left the company to him, split off one of his most promising departments, and took the talents there to Jiangqing's new factory area. Standing on the highest point nearby and looking down at this place, construction vehicles and construction teams were working day and night. This place would be the most promising area in this city in the future. Everything was booming. 13. In the later stages of pregnancy, my belly got bigger day by day. Ningning in my belly was very well behaved. During pregnancy, I hardly had any morning sickness. Instead, I was more energetic. On the day the company was officially established, Jiangqing and I cut the ribbon together. The moment the red silk fell, Anning kicked me in the belly. I gently touched my belly and said with a smile, "You're happy for mom too, aren't you?" She kicked again, as if really answering my question. After the pregnancy reached full term, Jiangqing looked at me like I was a bomb about to explode at any time. He didn't have the heart to work anymore and just stared at me every day. There was no way, so I could only go to the hospital in advance and stay there waiting for the delivery. The days of waiting for the delivery were like waiting for an old friend I hadn't seen for a long time. My daughter was like a friend to me. She spread a lot of advanced ideas to me. She took me to many places. She said I was her genius mother and that I really had talent. No matter what happened, she always stood by my side without hesitation. In this marriage, I had too many regrets and too much unwillingness, but the only thing I didn't regret was having my daughter. There was a very important meeting in the company in the middle, and I went back for a while. I originally thought my daughter's birthday was still a few days away. Unexpectedly, just after the meeting, my water broke. Jiangqing was so flustered that he fell while going to drive. He prayed all the way, extremely anxious. I only had some mild contractions at the moment and sneered, "The child isn't yours. Why are you in such a hurry?" His face was a few shades paler than mine. "You're my money-making god. Nothing must go wrong." When we arrived at the hospital, I was pushed into the delivery room. The delivery went smoothly. This was the first time in this life that I saw my daughter, and tears welled up in my eyes instantly. Other newly born babies were all wrinkled, like little old men. My daughter was different. My daughter was really beautiful. I only had one daughter, and I wanted to give her the best things in the world. 14. When I was discharged from the hospital and went home, Shinku was waiting downstairs. He seemed to have been waiting there for a long time. Frost had formed on his eyelashes. When he saw the child in the aunt's arms, his eyes suddenly turned red. His voice trembled with joy. "This is our child." I motioned for the aunt to take the child inside and said to him calmly, "No, this is my child." Shinku wanted to hold the child, but the aunt had already closed the door. "The child needs a father's love. Yuntang, you can't be so selfish." I looked at him and suddenly smiled. "There are plenty of people who can be like a father to my child. Which one are you? You don't have any evidence to prove that this child is yours. According to the principle of business negotiation, be tough first and then soft." Finally, I earnestly persuaded him, "Why bother? You'll have your own child in the future. Why hold on?" Shinku looked at me for a long time. "But I only want our child, the child between you and me. Gu Huan has gone abroad to settle down. I won't contact her again in the future." I had been waiting for this result for half of my life. It turned out that he knew the best way to deal with this matter, but he just pretended not to know. He let himself be immersed in his youth, enjoying the pleasure of being a hero saving the beauty. Even, did he really like Gu Huan that much? Does really liking someone make the other person seem like a third party? On one hand, he gave Gu Huan the wrong impression, and on the other hand, he never gave her any promise. At the beginning, Gu Huan didn't choose him but chose someone with better conditions. Whether there was resentment in his heart, only he knew. I suddenly found it a bit ridiculous. Indeed, the weak were easily bullied in this world. Jiangqing came at this time. He put his arm around my shoulder and winked at me quietly. Honey, this is the ex-husband who was entangled with that old classmate. He looks a bit old. How can the old be as good as the young? Honey, you must be bored these days. Let me give you a massage. I endured the shiver down my spine and responded to him. Shenke looked at me in disbelief and anger and punched Jiangqing. But after these years of living a life of comfort, how could Shenke be a match for a young man like Jiangqing? He fell to the ground and looked up at me. I put the fallen glasses back on for him. Go back. 15. After that day, I didn't see Shenke for a long time. Later, I found out that there were some problems with his company. Shenke really wasn't very suitable for doing business. He would be affected by various personal matters and affect the company. A factory supported the livelihoods of hundreds of employees. In the previous life, he had it too easy. Now that something had happened, there was no way to turn things around. I acquired his company and upgraded the original production lines. When the child was 3 years old, Jiangqing said he wanted to be the father of my child. I frowned and examined him, trying to understand what he was thinking. Tell me you're joking. Jiangqing shook his head. I took a deep breath. Are you out of your mind? Do you like being a step-father so much? Jiangqing looked at me pitifully, seeing that I was angry. His voice became much smaller. It was just that day when Gu Huan went abroad to settle down. Shenke and I went to see her off together. Shenke stood on the platform of the plane, watching her back gradually disappear at the end. Exactly. I had a headache and my expression became much more serious. In business, we should talk about business. It's best not to mix other things among business partners. Jiangqing looked at me stubbornly. Don't worry. It won't affect the business. I was really at a loss and tried to persuade him euphemistically. Think about it in another way.